Chapter 167-2, Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag Array. Day by day, time passed gradually, and all this time, Yishuan was constantly searching for deepwater black serpents in the East China Sea, and whenever found, he would immediately strike and kill them. In a blink of an eye, half a month had passed, and in less than 10 days, the gathering of the 5 forces of Great Yu State was going to take place in the East China Sea. Yishuan was unceasingly roaming in the depths of the East China Sea, and all this time, he had been looking for deepwater black serpent. In the last 2 weeks' time, Yishuan killed 16 deepwater black serpents. Most of them were huge and swarthy serpents and were already at the first stage of Truth Realm. However, 3 of them were actually huge monsters and were at the second stage of Truth Realm, but were also directly beheaded by Yishuan to be refined by Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag. Yishuan had condensed the essences and souls of 17 deepwater black serpents into the Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag, and so long as refined at the same, he would be able to practice the next-gen method of Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag. At that time, the might of this divine tool would simply be so incredible that even a master at the 3rd stage of Truth Realm would find it very difficult to deal with it. Right now, Yishuan was hiding underwater for quite a while, and far away from him, near the seabed mountain range, a several feet long gigantic deepwater black serpent was lying down horizontally in an oceanic trench. After looking for a long time, Yishuan finally selected the 18th deepwater black serpent to be condensed into the Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag. Then it could said that its might would be enough to fight off a Master of Truth 3rd stage. This deepwater black serpent was more than 2,000 feet in length, and looking at its length, it could be said that its length had almost reached 3,000 feet. Yishuan had been observing it for a long time and discovered that this deepwater black serpent was already at the peak of 2nd stage of Truth Realm and was almost close to shedding its skin and having a complete transformation. Then its length would increase and surpass 3,000 feet and it would finally step into the 3rd stage of Truth Realm. This deepwater black serpent was at the peak of Truth's 2nd stage, so Yishuan decided that at the time of refinement, he would keep it at the core of Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag Array. Then its overall might would be 10 times more than anticipated, and then, it would even be able to give a tough competition to a 3rd stage Master of Truth Realm. Moreover, during this 2 weeks' time, Yishuan had swallowed the nadins of several deepwater black serpents he killed, and as a result of that, the quantity of Zhen Yuan inside his body had dramatically reached the peak level. His inner state had also reached the pinnacle of Xiantian Great Realm, although Yishuan had yet to cross the barrier between Xiantian and Truth Realms, but right now, he was strong enough to effortlessly beat a master at the 1st stage of Truth Realm. In fact, he would also be able to beat a lot of ordinary masters at the 2nd stage of Truth Realm. And Yishuan was also able to affirm that if he could swallow the nidin of this gigantic deepwater black serpent, which was about to have a transformation and could step into the 3rd stage of Truth Realm any moment, then he would be able to break from the Xiantian realm and would step into the Truth Realm in one fell swoop. And after stepping into the Truth Realm, Yishuan could finally be able to effortlessly defeat the masters at the 1st and 2nd stage of Truth Realm. In fact, he would be able to easily compete with the masters at the 3rd stage of Truth Realm, and by relying on the might of Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag Array, he would even defeat a Master of Truth 3rd stage. Yishuan saw that this deepwater black serpent was in deep slumber and breathing several million jin of water, setting of intermittent waves of water, but even if it was in deep sleep, its whole body was protected in a layer of Zhen Yuan and an average master simply could not approach it. Since it had almost reached the 3rd stage of Truth Realm, so the amount of Zhen Yuan contained in its gigantic body was simply outrageous. Yishuan did not want to cause any complications. It was best to perform a sneak attack and completely kill this gigantic monster in a single move, and then that should minimize the fluctuations as well. One must know that numerous sea monsters lurked near the seabed and Yishuan was unaware of them. However, this part of seabed was close to coastline, so there weren't many sea monsters. As one would move farther away from the coastline, one would find innumerable terrifying sea monsters in the depths of the sea. This part of the seabed was at least more than 10,000 meters below the sea level and the pressure was ridiculously large. To be able to survive in such an enormous pressure, the demon beasts had to at least have the cultivation of truth level. The demon beasts with their cultivation less than truth level would be directly crushed to death at this depth. It was simply impossible for Xiantian level demon beasts to survive near the seabed. If the fluctuations were too large and ended up attracting the attention of other demon beasts, then that would be awful. Yi Xuan had faced a similar situation few days ago and didn't want the same to happen again. Last time he had to give up on his kill and had directly escaped after being attacked by several demon beasts. Also, it was a lot more difficult to deal with sea monsters at such a depth inside the sea. Yi Xuan fully centralized his concentration on attacking the deep-water black serpent. I am aiming for a one-shot kill. Use the Tianyuan mirror to lock up the area around here. We cannot allow the fluctuations to go past this region. Yi Xuan said. Not a big deal. Yi Mo said with a determined look on his face while he was stubbornly staring at that deep-water black serpent. At that moment, Yi Xuan moved. His figure seemed just like a flash of streamer as he rushed towards that deep-water black serpent. However, Yi Mo acted even faster and quickly manipulated the Tianyuan mirror, which instantly flew out and released a huge screen of scarlet light that immediately hung over the sleeping deep-water black serpent's body. A certain range of area was completely enveloped and locked up by that scarlet curtain along with the gigantic body of this sea monster. And at this time, Yi Xuan rushed towards that protective layer of Zhenyuan that was covering its body, but he did not hesitate, and in one fell swoop, he rushed past this protective barrier of Zhenyuan. Although this protective barrier was like an invincible shield that could block attacks, but how could it possibly block Yi Xuan? In a blink of an eye, he easily pierced through it and rushed towards the actual body of deep-water black serpent. But right at this time, the deep-water black serpent instantly sobered up and woke up from its deep slumber. It was alarmed when its Zhenyuan protective shield was directly pierced by Yi Xuan. It suddenly lifted its head upwards and roared loudly, and showing an unimaginable degree of flexibility, its huge body instantaneously moved. It flung its tail towards Yi Xuan, setting off endless waves of water, and just like a bulldozer, it swept towards him. Chapter 168-1, Steps into the Truth Realm. Although this deep-water black serpent was very large, but at this time, its degree of flexibility had actually gone far beyond the imagination of many people. It could be said that it was as fast as the lightning. It was able to instantly arrive in front of Yi Xuan, and suddenly, complete darkness spread in front of his eyes. Due to the sudden and quick movement of such a huge sea monster, it was as if several million jean of sea water was pressing down overhead and Yi Xuan was withstanding a relentless pressure. Yi Xuan was not startled or panicked in this situation and looked coldly at that gigantic deep-water black serpent. He struck his long blade at a strange angle, blasting an inexhaustible blade light, which directly cleaved the seawater and cut into the body of that deep-water black serpent. The flesh on the body of deep-water black serpent was immediately cut open and the loud metal clanging sound resounded after the collision of Yi Xuan's blade attack with the bones of the serpent. The intense pain immediately left the deep-water black serpent rolling on the seafloor. But at this time, the Tianyuan mirror dangled and finally assumed an awe-inspiring pose, then released bursts of intermittent scarlet color curtain. The scarlet-colored light curtain bumped into the body of deep-water black serpent and immediately burnt through the protective cover of Zhenyuan. It even burnt its flesh. Roar! Deep-water black snake felt intense pain and started struggling, and while struggling, it released endless amount of toxin in the water which welled up straight towards Yi Xuan. Yi Xuan did not have the slightest hesitation, and instantly, the rushing toxin was completely absorbed by the 17-surfaced poisonous dragon water control flag. Not even a shred of toxin was able to reach Yi Xuan's side. After absorbing the toxin, there was a faint light flashing from the 17-surfaced poisonous dragon water control flag. This poisonous dragon water control flag was itself just at the first stage of Truth Realm, or capable of killing the masters at the second stage of Truth Realm when used by Yi Xuan. How could it possibly be on par with a deep-water black serpent that was about to step into the third stage of Truth Realm? Yi Xuan sneered loudly, and from the whole body of 17 surfaced poisonous dragon water control flag, 17 large and small souls emerged out. These were the souls of 17 deep-water black serpents that Yi Xuan killed so far. They instantly appeared when Yi Xuan summoned them from the divine toll, and all of them rushed towards that deep-water black serpent one after another. Boom! 18 deep-water black serpents severely clashed and the souls of 17 deep-water black serpents immediately began to maliciously attack that deep-water black serpent. The sea was just like the boiling water, seething and boiling tremendously. It seemed as if the huge serpents were churning the water. When besieged by the 17 deep-water black serpents, that gigantic deep-water black serpent immediately went berserk and started moving crazily and fiercely to fend off and kill those other deep-water black serpents. With just one lash of its tail, a deep-water black serpent at the first layer of truth later was scattered and dispersed in the water, but fortunately, these serpents were actually just condensed energy and could instantly regather the dispersed energy to regain its form. Although there was some energy loss, but it was not a big deal for Yi Shiwen, because recently, he had looted the treasures from several groups of pirates in the East China Sea, so it could be said that at the moment, Yi Shiwen was quite wealthy and did not lack spirit stones. Yi Shiwen was waiting for an opening, an opportunity. Yi Shiwen had already activated the Divine Calm Breath technique. Since he already reached the acme level of this technique, above his head, from time to time, a faint trace of white smoke would emerge occasionally. It was a sign that this technique's main function was to invoke good fortune. In the legends about this technique, it was said that practitioner was able to succeed 3 out of 5 times while using this technique, but there were anomalies as well. Yi Shiwen was waiting for an opportunity. There was a fearless expression on his face and he was ready to attack any time, without the slightest fear. Finally, the opportunity he was waiting for quickly appeared, under the seas of 17 deep-water black serpents, and after being constantly irradiated by the terrifying scarlet light of Tianyuan Mirror, this deep-water black serpent's gigantic body was already covered in countless large and small wounds. Blood was oozing out from these wounds. From top to bottom, its whole body was covered in lots of nipped and bitten wounds. At some place, one could see the bones. Regardless of how angry it was, it did not have the means to escape, because it was being attacked by 17 of its own kind and they were all indestructible souls, so it was simply impossible to deal with them. In a flash, Yi Shiwen shot. Full Moon Beheader. Yi Shiwen was calm and collected. Only in a flash, the long blade chopped out a bright and dazzling blade light which was similar to the stars falling across the expanse of sky in general. The blade light went straight towards the deep-water black serpent, leaving trails along the way, and huge amount of water was instantly vaporized by the terrifying blade light. Puchi. The deep-water black serpent simply could not react and was instantly beheaded by Yi Shiwen. Its entire head was directly severed by the blade light. Its gigantic body was still unceasingly twitching on the seabed but could not save it from its doom. Yi Shiwen received back the poisonous dragon water control flag, and all of a sudden, the Lingqi also dispersed. That blow a moment ago was the strongest blade attack he could chop out at his current state. Under normal circumstances, he could not simply release such a blade attack. It was a stunning blade attack. There was silence in the sea water, as if it had been silent like this since the time immemorial. Under the protection of Tianyuan Mirror, not a shred of fluctuations or sound could go out. Yi Shiwen soon took out the deep-water black serpent's Naiden, and it was larger than the Naidens of other deep-water black serpents. It was faintly glowing and exuding a dim blue light. Without any hesitation, Yi Shiwen immediately sat cross-legged on the seabed and began to build up his strength, preparing for the actual breakthrough from the Xiantian realm to the Truth realm. When Yi Shiwen was at the Xiantian 9th stage, he was able to compete with the experts of Truth realm, which was already enough to shock everyone, but now, he was going to have an actual breakthrough and step into the Truth realm, which also meant that his strength would have a tremendous change. While on the other side, the deep-water black serpent's flesh and essence was also instantly and completely absorbed by the Tianyuan mirror, and the mirror began to exude dark scarlet-colored rays of light, which appeared somewhat strange. The Tianyuan mirror was finally on the verge of a breakthrough. After all, in a short period of time, it absorbed the flesh, blood and essence of several deep-water black serpents. Chapter 168-2, Steps into the Truth Realm. These deep-water black snakes were really powerful demon beasts. Even strength of one was unimaginable for an average man, but Tianyuan Mirror absorbed the essence from 17 of these deep-water black serpents, so it could be said that the strength of Tianyuan Mirror had started to approach the second layer of Truth Realm. Then, after the flesh, blood and essence of this deep-water black serpent was completely digested, refined and absorbed by the Tianyuan mirror, its strength could be fully restored to the second layer of Truth Realm, then it would become an even more useful weapon in Yi Zaiwen's arsenal. In many cases and considering a lot of situations, Yi Shiwen had to use Tianyuan mirror to settle many things. However, compared with the difficulty of Yi Zaiwen's breakthrough, the recovery of Tianyuan mirror was a much simpler job. Yi Shiwen absorbed the Niden he took out from the bodies of the deep-water black serpents he killed in the last few days. Originally, he did not dare to absorb the Niden of demon beasts, because the Jin Yuan of humans and demon beasts was not the same. Some people called this monster Yuan, which was a heterogeneous kind of Jin Yuan. It was also very violent and chaotic. In fact, earlier, Yi Shiwen had hunted many demon beasts, especially when he was still in the forest of Qingfeng Mountain. There he hunted a lot of demon beasts, but he would always replace the demon cores with low-grade spirit stones, because he did not dare to absorb them directly. The direct and casual absorption could suddenly explode his body and kill him. However, now the situation was very different from what it used to be back then. Before absorbing the energy from Niden, Yi Shiwen would first filter it using the Tianyuan mirror, and after filtering the energy, it would become the same as the Zhen Yuan present in his body, removing a lot of impurities and making it even better and much more pure than the Zhen Yuan already present in his body. So Yi Shiwen could rest assured and freely absorb the refined energy from the Niden. In a flash, the massive amount of energy contained in the Niden of this gigantic deep-water black serpent began to gradually enter the body of Yi Shiwen's body. It was like the resentful soul of the deep-water black serpent, which was condensed in its Niden, and now, it was not extinguishing and firmly attaching itself to the Niden. Yi Shiwen simply did not mind. He began to mobilize Jin Yuan repression, and soon, the digestion of deep-water black serpent slowly progressed, its soul getting smaller and smaller. And Yi Shiwen was becoming more and more powerful, while his imposing aura was also increasing gradually and becoming more and more terrifying. During Yi Zaiwen's breathing, the surrounding seawater formed waterspout along with his respiration. His strength had already reached deeply into the exceptionally terrifying realm. The imposing aura of Yi Shiwen finally started to increase successively at a very high speed. After a long time passed, Tianyuan mirror finally and completely refined the flesh, blood and essence of the deep-water black serpent, and thanks to this, Yi Mo was able to finally restore the mirror to the strength of second stage of Truth Realm, and now, its strength was enough to suppress most of the masters at the second stage of Truth Realm. At this time, Yi Mo finally came out of the Tianyuan mirror and took shape. Originally, the image of the Yi Mo was that of a little devil, but now, he transformed and took image of a young student, with elegant bearing, a green meat clothing, had several points of bearing actually, but could not conceal the breath of a devil. He appeared was somewhat nondescript. However, he had always been a tool spirit and tool spirits did not have a fixed image. The image they took was always according with the master's preferences. Yi Mo's previous master was a peerless great devil king, so Yi Mo ended up having an image of a little devil as his master would have imagined him, but now his host was a human, so he also became a human, and for Yi Mo, it was all the same, nothing was unacceptable to him. Yi Mo looked somewhat bored while watching the imposing aura of Yi Shiwen growing bit by bit towards the final breakthrough from Xiantian realm to Truth realm, but although he looked lazy and bored, but he was still very vigilant. The Tianyuan mirror was working non-stop to mask all the fluctuations in the surroundings of Yi Shiwen, in order to avoid another attack from nearby sea monsters, which might lead to a considerable delay in the breakthrough of Yi Shiwen. And the 17-surfaced poisonous dragon water control flag was also constantly floating, all prepared to guard against the possibility of emergence of the enemy. At this time, Yi Shiwen wrinkled his eyebrows. The refined heterogeneous energy had been fully digested within in his body, and the Zhen Yuan had also become much more vigorous and reached a much higher level than before, when it came to purity. He planned to direct this incomparably pure and vigorous Zhen Yuan to open up the gate to the Truth Realm. Stepping into the Truth Realm was said the second major hurdle in the life of a martial artist, because unlike human beings, there were a lot of demon beasts or devil races who were born directly in the Xiantian realm, and by the time they reached adulthood, they would automatically step into the Truth Realm without any hindrance. For human beings, breaking through to the truth realm was even more difficult than to the difficulty of practicing and breaking through all the way from the Hotian realm to the peak of Xiantian realm put together. In order to step into the Xiantian realm from the Hotian realm, it was necessary to open up the world bridge. So during that transition, when the world bridge was opened up, it allowed the body to switch from the initial closed state in the Hotian realm, to open state in the Xiantian realm. The experts of the truth realm were considered honorable people, which meant that from the time they entered into the truth realm from Xiantian realm, they would give up affectation and go back to the nature. Then there would be no value of some representations, there would only be the value of the true essence of the world. Only after stepping into the truth realm, one could finally come in contact with the world's true essence and laws. It was a new beginning and a brand new process. Impact. Unceasing impact. Compared to other people who would find it very difficult to make an impact on the boundary of the truth, Yishuan had the advantage that he had already comprehended the basic laws of the world, because the truth realm needs the master to comprehend the world laws, and he had almost comprehended the required laws by using the mysterious space, and now, he was relying on it and the strength of newly acquired vigorous Jin Yuan to have a breakthrough. Did not know how much time had passed already. In the depths of the sea, there was no sense of day or night. Boom! An enormous breath burst out from the body of Yishuan. It was one type of intense imposing aura which was entirely different from his former imposing aura, and a completely different breath was overflowing the surroundings. Yishuan opened his eyes in the water. He had finally stepped into the truth realm. Chapter 169-1 by Mojiao's plot. Truth Realm. Yishuan finally had a breakthrough and stepped into the truth realm. He accomplished an unfathomable feat, something that was simply impossible for others to even contemplate. In this short span of a year, he stepped into the truth realm and became a true disciple. He could feel the changes in his body, which was glowing with vitality. A kind of vigorous and turbulent energy was flowing within his body that was entirely different from how it used to be when he was in Xiantian realm. Sure enough, there was a huge difference between truth realm and Xiantian, just like the difference between heaven and earth. Although he went merely a step forward, but he was fully able to feel a completely different and much more formidable strength than before. This was the genuine power of the truth realm. Relying on the beforehand and deep accumulation of energy from the nadins of 18 deep-water black serpents, last of them being almost at the third stage of truth realm, Yishuan rushed all the way to the peak of first stage of truth realm and was ready to cross over this one line and step into the second stage of truth realm. Now, Yishuan could easily compete with invincible masters at the third stage of truth realm, and even if he ran into a master like that elder Jin Xian, he would be able to defend himself. In fact, by drawing support from the poisonous dragon water control flag array, it would be quite easy for Yishuan to fight him off. Yishuan got up and began the sacrifice of the last deep-water black serpent's soul for refining the last piece of poisonous dragon water control flag array. At present, Yishuan had already stepped into the truth realm and tremendous change occurred in his strength compared to his earlier strength. Regarding the matter of refining the poisonous dragon water control flag array, it was just going to be an easy job for him. It was nothing more than a child's play for him, and he seemed unusually very familiar with the refining process as well, since he had already done it once before. Soon, the strongest piece for refining the poisonous dragon water control flag array was also complete. It skimmed out and joined the 17 surfaced poisonous dragon water control flag to form a resonance relation. The flag array was finally complete, and now, the only thing left was to constantly increase the might of this poisonous dragon water control flag. Since it was needed to behead and refine poisonous dragons to make a genuine poisonous dragon water control flag array, so the poisonous dragon water control flag array refined by Yishuan was only an imitation of the real thing, and its might was certainly far less. Later, he would have to behead more deep-water black serpents and refine their souls in order to increase the might of this divine tool. Yishuan got up and set out towards the sea surface. He was about to head in the direction of Qianji Island in order to meet up with the other people from Yiyuan school before the gathering, but suddenly, a violent fluctuation of formidable machi came rushing towards Yishuan. There are devils in the East China Sea. Yi Xuan immediately gawked and exclaimed all of a sudden a moment, this was totally unexpected, and from the type of mochi, Yi Xuan could not make a mistake. Big fluctuation. Yi Xuan was less than 10 li away from the source of this fluctuation. This mochi was mighty and very formidable. Yi Xuan did not move, just advanced in that direction while quietly lurking, because he could sense a terrifying presence from the source of that mochi that seemed to possess an intimidating breath. Yi Xuan did not take much time to realize that the mighty mochi was just too enormous and extremely powerful. It immediately attracted the attention of numerous formidable demon beasts lurking near the seabed. Many truth-level demon beasts swam up from the seabed. The violent surge of Zhen Yuan turned sea water into numerous water swords, which were emitted at once and rushed towards the group of devils, but simply could not get close to them. The water swords were directly crushed in succession. Some of the devils in this group were horrifyingly formidable. Who are they, to think they are actually so fierce? Yi Xuan narrowed his eyes after witnessing this scene and did not know what to think. Also, for what reason will the devil race come to the East China Sea? Yi Xuan felt somewhat strange. He advanced quietly and stealthily to have a look, but suddenly, a humming sound resounded in the sea. Who are you people, actually dare to enter the territory of this Heishui? It was actually the voice of a human, which immediately left Yi Xuan in a very panic-stricken state. When demon beasts could speak in a human voice, with or without attaining an actual human form, it could be said that it was definitely a terrifying existence among the demon beasts, and its intelligence was generally no less than intelligence possessed by human beings. And these highly intelligent demon beasts were often very formidable and scary. Heishui, could it be that you do not remember an old friend? A voice came from the group of devils and suddenly said, accompanied by a burst of laughter. It's you. Come in. The voice said and went silent soon after finishing, and soon, a large group of devils and sea beasts were welcomed inside a cave mansion. Yi Xuan slightly hesitated but decided to have a look at what was going on. He already had a feeling that once again, devil race was certainly up to no good and must be planning something big. Yi Xuan pulled out the poisonous dragon water control flag, and at the same time, he took possession of the incarnation of the flag and transformed into a deep-water black serpent, leisurely swim in the water. Yi Xuan had already practiced the restraining breath technique to the Acme level, and after reaching the perfection of this technique, even the demon beast in the sea would be unable to sense that there was something wrong, that it was actually a human transformed as a demon beast. Yi Xuan swam all the way forward, and soon, a cave mansion appeared in front of him. He began to swim slowly towards the entrance, but suddenly, a divine perception swept over Yi Xuan in order to confirm that he was not a threat. Then he was received by this divine perception. Yi Xuan was secretly relieved. It got really too dangerous a moment ago, but fortunately, he had practiced the restraining breath technique to the perfection level. In addition to that, his soul was completely enveloped inside the soul of the deep-water black serpent, so he was not discovered. If he was discovered here, then he might get in big trouble. One must know that at this place, there were too many of these truth-level demon beasts. Yi Xuan knew very well that if his identity of being a human was discovered, other than making a quick escape, he would have no other way out. Moreover, the commotion would possibly alarm the other formidable demon beasts, and at that time, it would actually be a dead end for him. Chapter 169-2 By Mo Jiao's plot. Yi Xuan was pretending to swim casually and carelessly and arrived next to the demon beast that was responsible for the guarding. Looked at Yi Xuan, but did not care too much, because while using the poisonous dragon water control flag, Yi Xuan had chosen to transform into the first deep-water black serpent he killed, the same one that had recently reached adulthood by stepping into the first stage of Truth Realm. Also, right now, Yi Xuan's consciousness had not developed fully, and even after transforming, he was just strolling around everywhere, but from the familiar smell, he could confirm that this place was really the Heishui's mansion. There was no doubt about it. Yi Xuan was slowly wandering into the depths of the cave mansion, and at a distant place, he took a glimpse and actually saw the group of devils speaking with a huge deep-water black serpent. He saw that this deep-water black serpent's size was easily more than 10,000 feet. It was lying horizontally on the ground. The brilliance and toughness of its skins was entirely different than the general deep-water black serpents. This deep-water black serpent's body was densely covered in numerous thick scales, and even had 4 limbs, which definitely should not have been possible in case of ordinary deep-water black serpents. Although the entire body was almost 10,000 feet long, but with respect to its huge body, it seems somewhat deformed and small, even its head had grown out of its body at a tender and immature angle. Seeing this scene, Yishuan immediately held his breath and gasped for a moment. Indeed, this was definitely the deep-water black snake king. Moreover, it could be seen that there were all sorts of signs indicating that this deep-water black serpent would soon transform into a water dragon. Yishuan could see many signs. It was clearly visible that its scales would melt soon, the abnormal 4 limbs, the angled head. All of these signs clearly declared that this deep-water black serpent king would soon evolve into a water dragon. Water dragon was considered a creature of the legendary realm. It could be said that it was a transition species between demon beast and real dragons and contained dragon blood in its blood vessels. Legend said that when true dragons took birth directly in the legendary realm of birth and by the time they reached adulthood, their strength would have already reached outrageous proportions. Dragons were mythical creatures and were the so-called ominous beasts, and even one was enough to bring chaos and disaster upon Yuan school. However, although water dragon was not a real dragon and their species was obviously inferior to the real dragon species, but just like real dragons, water dragon species had also become part of myths and legends. It was extremely rare for someone to see a water dragon. No one knew how many years had passed since the last time someone saw a water dragon. Water dragons were the beasts of legendary realm, and perhaps, there were some hiding in the depths of East China Sea. It's actually a deep-water black serpent king that is soon going to transform into a water dragon. It's a big fortune, Yishuan, a big good luck. Yimo's excited voice resounded in the mind of Yishuan. Yishuan simply did not care about what he said. How was a deep-water black serpent that's soon going to transform into a water dragon was a big good luck? As if Yishuan could go and easily kill him. While Yishuan was living his unstated criticism time, a divine perception of that deep-water black serpent king swept over towards Yishuan, and when it swept over Yishuan, the serpent king found a deep-water black serpent, but he did not doubt anything and took back the divine perception, thinking that Yishuan was one of his own descendants. In fact, the area surrounding the Heishui cave mansion was actually the territory of deep-water black serpent king, and all of the deep-water black serpents living in this area were his children and grandchildren. The small deep-water black serpent, which Yishuan had transformed into, appeared as a new adult who did not have much intelligence yet and was blindly swaying everywhere in the water. Of course, he did not know that a human being was hidden within the soul of this young deep-water black serpent, and not just that, this human had also killed several of his children and grandchildren and intended to kill many more. Otherwise he would chase Yishuan to the ends of the world in order to kill him. Yishuan actually saw that the huge body of deep-water black serpent king had condensed out a humanoid soul that was talking to the group of devils. The ordinary deep-water black serpents could never display such an amazing ability. It was indeed the deep-water black serpent king that was soon going to transform into the water dragon. Yizaiwen's eyes once again turned towards the group of devils. He actually saw that their leader was a young man, clad in a bright-colored robe. The corners of his mouth were curled up in a smile and there was a happy expression on his face, but at this time, Yishuan felt a terrifying and peerless aura coming out from his body, and it was unexpectedly not weaker than that of the deep-water blade serpent king. That said, it turned out that he was actually a fearful character and was already in the half-step legendary realm. After this young man, Yizaiwen's vision also located an old acquaintance in the group of devils, Prince Mo Yen. Yishuan did not expect to see him in the team, and compared to a few months ago, now, his strength had shown a rapid progress. Now, he was no longer just a master of the Xiantian realm but the master of Truth realm. Although, there was instability in the aura of Prince Mo Yen, might be because not much time passed since he entered into the Truth realm, but it was enough to prove that during these few months, Prince Mo Yen must have had a fortuitous encounter and obtained great benefits. Behind Prince Mo Yen, there were a total of 6 people, wrapped in shadow-like cloaks, and among these shadows, the strength of each was not simple. All of them were the masters of the Truth realm, including both weak and super Truth level masters. Yi Xuan then finally discovered that he actually made a mistake. This was not just the team of devils, but was actually a team of Bai Majiao. But that was also similar. Apparently there were the Bai Majiao infested areas, so one could certainly not avoid the devils. Lu Hongwei, tell me, why have you come this time? The humanoid soul of Deepwater Black Serpent King said, although the expression was very vague, it was not a clear expression, but one could certainly sense careless tone in it. What? He actually turned out to be Lu Hongwei. Yi Xuan suddenly gawked when he heard the name, Lu Hongwei. It was definitely an illustrious name, and during the turmoil of Bai Majiao 100 years ago, the name had become very infamous and legendary. At that time, he was already an extremely powerful character. It could be said that his strength was comparable to the strength of the top 4 disciples of Yi Yuan school. He was also considered the strongest in the younger generation of devils in the Great Yu State. Chapter 170-1 arrives at Qianji Island. Lu Hongwei was considered a very illustrious and infamous character in those times when Bai Majiao was most active. His strength was comparable to the 4 strongest true disciples of Yi Yuan school. Yi Xuan looked carefully and noticed that his strength was not inferior to that of Qi Fifan. In fact, he was also a peerless master of half-step into the legendary realm. Among the 4 strongest true disciples of Yi Yuan school, excluding Qi Fifan, who had a late rise to the ranks of strongest 4, all of the other 3 strongest true disciples had fought with Lu Hongwei, although none of the 3 could ever defeat him, but weren't defeated either, and this clearly showed the immense strength of Lu Hongwei. Yi Xuan was being very careful because if any one of these 2 peerless masters discovered that there was something strange or suspicious, then he would not be able to escape. It would certainly be a dead end for him. 100 years have gone, but Heishui, you are just like you used to be back then. Lu Hongwei actually did not hurry to reply and said in a relaxed manner. If you have something to say it directly. The Deepwater Black Serpent King said in a commanding voice, clearly displaying the demeanor of an experienced superior. Although he originally had the origin of a demon beast, but he was the so-called legendary Millennium Flood Dragon. He had lived through thousands of years. It was hard to imagine the extent of his experience. Demon beasts weren't usually as wily and cunning as human beings, but in the case of an old monster like Deepwater Black Serpent King, one could be absolutely sure that he was wily and experienced. The 5 forces of Great Yu State are going to unite. They are going to have a gathering on Qianji Island to confirm their friendly collaboration. Do you know about this? Lu Hongwei did not beat around the bush and directly said. This matter concerns you, human being, why should I know about it? Deepwater Black Serpent King indifferently said. Heishui, this statement of yours seems groundless. Lu Hongwei said with a faint smile. Other demon beasts are ignorant and unconscious about their surroundings. All they know is to slaughter and fighting every day, but how could Heishui be ordinary like them? Well, in the end, what do you want from me? Deepwater Black Serpent King narrowed his sharp flashing eyes and said. Heishui, as far as I know, for the last few centuries, several forces of Great Yu State have joined up together and have suppressed the development of your territory, which includes several channels and demon beasts that come under your control. Am I correct so far? Lu Hongwei said. Yes, so what? Deepwater Black Serpent King, Heishui lightly said. Don't you want to get rid of their control, become a side giant influence and do whatever you want? Lu Hongwei curled up the corners of his mouth and said. Say, Heishui, you do not have the aspirations and ambitions, let those people get terrified. You do not need to prod me, it's useless. These words seemed to have failed in stimulating the wily and experienced Heishui. Heishui vaguely knew what the other party was talking about, but he would not swallow the bait so easily. The existence of 5 big forces of the Great Yu State was like a relentless pressure that he had no choice but to withstand, while he was like a loach, surviving in the crevice. He was already aware of the fact that the number of legendary masters among the 5 forces was calculated in tens, not to mention he was just at the half-step legendary level. This time, our Bai Majiao organization is planning to subvert the rule of Great Yu State in one fell swoop, and use it as a springboard, to bring the rule of Devil World in this world. Lu Hongwei did not mind to put out the highest secret and openly said this to Heishui. Perhaps, This was the most important secret that most people did not know. The true motive of a notorious organization like Bai Majiao was not known to everyone, but it was quite useless to inform the people about this because anyway it was necessary to defeat Bai Majiao. You need us. He Shui said, but did not seem very interested in this topic. Even if the devil race came to this world, he did not care much because he was the ruler of demon beasts in the deep sea and his influence was not that great. I know Bai Mojiao's influence is very huge. Subverting the rule of Great Yu State is only a matter of time. Yes, our Bai Mojiao's influence is very huge indeed, far more powerful than what you can imagine at this moment, but even if we are so formidable, we have quite a formidable opponent, so we need as much support as we can draw. Lu Hongwei lightly said. We will unite all forces that can be united, and this time, we will give those 5 forces a lesson on the Qianji Island. So what, even if you go to the Qianji Island and attack the 5 forces during their gathering, even if you kill most of them, is it still not enough to cause heavy losses to them? He Shui disdainfully said. This is a war and will probably last for a long time, and we do not intend to finish it off in one shot. It is impossible to defeat them in so quickly, it has to be done slowly and gradually, and this is one of the steps of the main plan. Lu Hongwei said, what do you say? You must consider helping us. This is the one-time opportunity for a sea monster like you to come ashore. Expect our Bai Majiao. There are no human forces who will allow you to come ashore. He Shui seemed quite interested. After all, nobody wanted to have to live an entire life in this dark place, especially a truth master who were said to have gotten rid of many features of life and wanted to explore the entire world and learn about the various laws of this world. Just like the truth-level human experts could breathe in the water, the truth-level sea beasts could breathe ashore. This was mutual. In fact, even Xiantian-level sea beasts could a few days on the shore. Chapter 172 arrives at Qianji Island, but, I heard that this time, high-level experts from various sects is coming to the gathering, so even if I go, it will be useless. He Shui said. Rest assured, they will not come, some of our people will constrain them. Lu Hongwei indifferently said. At the same time, Yi Shuan was listening on the side and was suddenly startled because he never expected that Lu Hongwei would come here and that too for such a purpose, that he was planning such a conspiracy. Well, in that case, we will join you. My children also need to go out of this place, but still, after all of this is finished, we want at least 30 county prefecture of the Great Yu coastal region. He Shui said. No problem. Lu Hongwei said. It seems that this trip to the Qianji Island will not be a smooth one. Yi Shuan did not continue to eavesdrop and slowly swam out of the cave palace, disguised as a young deep-water black serpent. He didn't get discovered and slowly swam away without getting into trouble. After leaving the territory of He Shui, Yi Shuan transformed back to his human form. These devils from Bai Majiao have spread everywhere and are trying to win the support from various forces, and its tentacles even extend into the deep sea. Yi Shuan said in a somewhat worried tone, although this level of fighting was not a big threat for him, now that he had stepped into the truth level, but it did not mean that he would not care. In fact, he was quite concerned about it, because even in his past life, he was a human, and in this life as well, he was a human, so how could he so easily accept the rule of the devils, let alone these devils were so brutal. I need to first rush to the Qianji Island and inform the sect about this. Yi Shuan decided in his heart. Yi Shuan felt particularly heavy in his heart. He could clearly sense that a great storm was going to hit this world and bring utmost chaos. The actions of Bai Majiao made him have a sense of approaching danger. This was the so-called feeling of having goosebumps, because once Yi Yuan's school collapsed, then the consequences would simply be unimaginable. At present, Yi Shuan just now stepped into the truth realm, and at his current strength, a truth-level master like him was indeed considered strong in the Great Yu State, not to mention, Great Yu State was considered one of the strongest states in this big world. But, even if Yi Shuan went to the most powerful country, he would still have a certain status and would not be considering as some weakling. It could be said that only after achieving the truth realm, one could actually travel to the various states, but the Great Yu State would always be Yi Zaiwen's mother place, where his foundation lied, not to mention he was not alone. If he was alone, he could go wandering around the world and do what he wanted without caring about anyone or anything, but he was not. He still had his family and friends, and all of this was going to change a lot of things, and could endanger his family and friends, so he could not just stand idly and watch. He must get involved. Devil race would bring about war, destruction, and chaos. If the very existence of devil race invoked destruction and chaos everywhere they went, if the devil race must win all that is present in front of their eyes, then Yishuan didn't have a choice but to prepare himself for the extermination of devil race. This was the first time when Yishuan had a strong wish to destroy an entire race. In this entire world, to Yishuan, his family was the most cherished thing. Regardless of who tried to threaten their safety, he would treat them as his sworn enemy, even if the other party was the so-called infamous and terrifying devil race. If they threatened the safety of his family, then he wouldn't mind to eradicate their entire race if he had to in order to ensure the safety of his family. Meanwhile, Yishuan also had a feeling of urgency. His cultivation was far from enough, although it could be said that truth-level experts had the qualifications to participate in the mighty waves of war, but they were merely capable of performing as the one of the pawns, let alone acting as chess players. In fact, Yishuan was not even capable of being the weighty chess piece. Only the masters at the level of those 4 strongest true disciples could be considered as weighty chess piece. The intense sense of urgency was forcing Yishuan to have unceasing promotion in strength, and now, he must have a rapid growth in strength in a short time. Although Lu Hongwei also said that this fight might not end in a short period of time, but this short period of time was probably 10 years or less, one could not really say how much growth a truth-level master would have during this time, because for a true disciple like Yishuan, this much of time was not going to be enough to have breakthroughs and level up. After that, Yishuan quickly turned around and swam out of the sea. The intermittent waves of sea breeze was blowing against his face. Yishuan looked at the nautical map, and after ascertaining his position and the relative position of his destination, Qianji Island, he flew in the direction of Qianji Island while riding a divine rainbow and instantly disappeared into the horizon. Unknowingly, Yishuan had penetrated very far into the East China Sea, but Qianji Island was relatively close to the coastline, so he had to make a long flight to reach there. The flight to the Qianji Island took more than 2 days' time and Yishuan finally approached it. Qianji Island was a very large island. It was known as the territory of 1,000 clans, so the infrastructure on this island was actually ready-made and seemed quite extensive. Soon, Yishuan flew into the range of Qianji Island, and from afar, he saw some people at dispute. "Sister Hua, I have adored you for a long time, so long as you say yes, I will immediately go back and make my father come to propose for our marriage." Chapter 171, Rolanjin the Mud. "Sister Hua, I have adored you for a long time, so long as you say yes, I will immediately go back and make my father come to propose for our marriage." Yishuan looked and saw that it was a young disciple, and looking at the clothes he was wearing, one could easily make out that it was actually the dress of Lu Yunqing disciples. Among the 4 big forces, Lu Yunqing had always been relatively close to the royal clan, which itself possessed formidable strength, and not just that, Lu Yunqing had always been supported by the royal clan, so this was one of the reasons why the royal clan had always been the most powerful among all the big forces of Great Yu State. A bunch of other Lu Yunqing disciples were standing behind that young disciple. "Pardon me, young city lord, but I have no interest in you." Hua Menghan frowned and said. "Also, I want to request young city lord to not waste any thoughts regarding this matter." The young city lord was about to continue speaking about it, when suddenly, with a loud bang, Yishuan landed on the ground, and directly ignoring that young city lord, he arrived in front of Hua Menghan. Yishuan. Hua Menghan did not expect to meet Yishuan at this time. He was not present in the team of Yi Yuan school when the team left for Qianji Island, and there was also no sign of him for the last several days. "Where is the deputy head? I have something important to inform him." Yishuan said directly, because for him, at this moment, this was the most important matter. Of course, Bai Majiao joined forces with Heishui and his army of sea beasts and was planning to attack Qianji Island during the gathering of 5 forces, but according to him, this collaboration between Bai Majiao and Heishui could not be so simple and must not be taken lightly. This time, The gathering of 5 big forces of Great Yu State would most likely turn into a huge collision between the two sides, so nothing was more important than this matter, and the deputy head must be informed about it as soon as possible. Yi Xuan knew that in this gathering, Yi Yuan School's team was going to be led by the deputy head of Yi Yuan School. "Who are you?" When the young city lord saw that Yi Xuan suddenly arrived and started talking with Hua Menghan, without paying attention to him, he suddenly felt very uncomfortable. "This matter is very important." Yi Xuan looked at Hua Menghan and said. Hua Menghan also seemed to feel that Yi Xuan was not joking. She nodded and said, "Deputy head did not come together with us, our leader this time is brother Qi Fifan." "You insolent boy, cannot you hear that our young city lord is talking to you?" At this time, standing behind that young city lord, a loud clamor suddenly resounded. It actually belonged to a master of Xiantian Great Realm, and not just him, there were several other masters of Xiantian Great Realm standing behind young city lord, and all of them were actually his personal attendants. And Yi Xuan also found an old man standing not far from him, and he was at the second stage of Truth Realm. Perhaps the status of this young city lord in Lu Yunqing should not be low, because he was actually at the first stage of Truth Realm, and one could easily guess that his future prospects were boundless. Moreover, he was called young city lord and should be one of the respected families of Lu Yunqing, and there was possibility that he might be the direct disciple of Lu clan, the vein of Lu Yunqing's city lord. But, a member of Yi Yuan School was far more different from a member of Lu Yunqing. The disciples of Lu Yunqing were relatively fixed, basically a direct descendant of the large or small families of Lu Yunqing, and it also had the vein of the city lord and 4 influential clans, making 5 big influences of Lu Yunqing. The strength of these 5 big influences was very enormous. And this system was only followed in the royal clan and Lu Yunqing. The ranking system followed in these 2 forces was very strict. From the beginning to end, these 2 forces had implemented a stern hierarchy, the suppression from the direct descendant of the lineage, the suppression of the low-status people from the high-status people. However, in the case of Yi Yuan School, this type of ranking system based on lineage rarely occurred. All of the disciples were ambitious to climb upwards, all only spoke with strength and talent. Those who were powerful and highly talented high would naturally get better training and more resources from the sect, irrespective of their lineage. However, Lu Yunqing was no different than royal clan. Both of these forces differentiated based on bloodline. The people of noble blood would naturally get more resources, and compared to several other forces, the royal clan could get various resources of the country to support their disciples, so even if it was a kind of an abnormal policy, but it had still ensured the formidable strength of Lu Yunqing and royal clan. Although the system of differentiating based on the bloodline seems somewhat biased, but it was undeniable that this was by no means without reason, because there has been genetic improvement in the royal clan over the years, as well as many of the strong men of royal clan had left more descendants. There were often many talented ones among these children of the royal clan, and occasionally, there would be the appearance of some peerless genius, who could maintain the prosperousness of the royal clan. However, Yi Xuan simply did not care about these things. He immediately shouted to clear the way, "Get lost, do not hinder me." That young city lord's complexion suddenly became very unsightly. He was the young city lord, a nobility. It could be said that he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. His strength was outstanding, was a master at the first stage of Truth Realm. Even among the younger generation, he was considered a genius, sufficient to rule the roost. How could an existence like him be ignored and disrespected so casually? "Boy, do you know who you're talking to?" A warrior, standing behind that young city lord, gave a loud shout, and a big hand made up of lingqi instantly grasped towards Yi Xuan. "Get lost!" Yi Xuan shouted loudly, sending terrifying sound waves towards the incoming big hand. These sound waves were just like the sonic arrows which directly punctured the big hand made up of lingqi. "At present, I don't have free time to play with you, do not mess with me." Yi Xuan knitted his eyebrows and coldly said, he simply did not want to waste time on this spoiled son of a rich and influential clan. "You are courting death." The young city lord could not bear any more. He was enduring not because he was good-natured, but he actually wanted to maintain a good image in front of Hua Menghan and nothing more, but after hearing the words of Yi Xuan, he lost his self-control. Right now, suddenly a feeling of embarrassment appeared in the heart of the young city lord. It was as if he was like a child who asked for a candy from an adult, and the adult said something very rude, so the child started rolling in the mud to force the adult to fulfill his wish, but the adult said that he had no time to accompany him playing in the mud. This feeling of being inferior to Yi Shuwen made him have an ashamed feeling, his face turned red like a red fruit. This was a type of an extreme feeling of being embarrassed. He was trying to act normal all this time because Hua Menghan was also present there, but in the end, he could not bear any more. 100 Stages God Fist. A fist fiercely rumbled towards Yi Shuwen. The Quan Jin went across the sky and instantly advanced towards Yi Shuwen. The strength contained in this fist attack had already reached an extreme level. One could see that young city lord was not intending to give Yi Shuwen an opportunity to react. A cold light flashed in the eyes of Yi Shuwen. He did not expect that the other party would actually dare to attack him all of a sudden. Moreover, he also seemed to have used his best and most powerful attack against Yi Shuwen. One could imagine the vicious intention in the heart of the young city lord. This technique called 100 Stages God Fist was exactly the same technique used by Dai Xiaohua, but compared to the fist technique of Dai Xiaohua, this was much more exquisite and countless times powerful. It could be seen that had almost reached the stage of perfection. Although the young city lord was quite annoying, but Yi Shuwen had to admit that he was capable enough to practice the 100-stage God Fist to such an extent. You are courting death. Yi Shuwen shouted and rushed towards the opposite party. At this time, Yi Shuwen certainly would not retreat. He blasted an average fist towards the young city lord. It was not a fist technique. It was just an average mediocre punch, completely without any gaudiness and skill, just an average fist. There was nothing to simplify. It did not contain the unsurpassed deep meaning of some fist technique. It just simply relied on the fact that even an average fist of Yi Shuwen, without any skill or technique, was enough to crush that young city lord. Boom! Two fists fiercely collided together, and instantly, the fist pressure caused due to the collision set off an endless blast of intermittent waves of thunderstorms, accompanied by loud sounds, causing several air explosions that sent shock waves in all directions. Ta, ta, ta. The young city lord withdrew several successive steps before stopping. Well, big power and prestige, good way to vent off the anger. Yi Shuwen sneered, his figure flickered, and instantly, he rushed towards the young city lord and blasted his fist at him, again without the slightest skill, but this time, way before the fist could arrive, the terrifying fist pressure arrived in front of young city lord and pressed down on his body. When Yi Shuwen was at the Xiantian 9th stage, he was able to fight off a master at first stage of Truth Realm, and now that he had stepped into the Truth Realm, he was easily able to fight off a master at the second stage of Truth Realm, and he could also compete with a master at the third stage of Truth Realm. One must know that the difference between each of the 9 stages of Truth Realm was unimaginable big. Although right now, both Yi Shuwen and young city lord were at the first stage of Truth Realm, but the skill of Yi Shuwen had already reached a fearful point, and when he shot his fist, it completely manifested the true strength of Yi Shuwen, which was far more than the strength of a master at the first stage of Truth Realm. Boom! A terrifying coercion severely pressed upon his body. Poof! That young city lord spouted a mouthful of blood. There was a panic-stricken look in his eyes. He just could not believe that Yi Shuwen would actually be intrepid to such an extent. Yi Shuwen had already practiced restraining breath technique to a very profound level, and while using it, he could hide a large section of his breath, so in the eyes of people, Yi Shuwen seemed like a warrior at the first stage of Truth Realm. They couldn't feel his extraordinary strength, he just seemed like an expert who recently stepped into the Truth Realm. However, after Yi Shuwen completely released his imposing aura, an alarmed and terrified look appeared on the face of young city lord when he discovered that the true strength of Yi Zaiwen's strength was far beyond his imagination. The fist attack of Yi Shuwen encroached towards young city lord and arrived in front of him. The young city lord panicked and also issued several moves of 100 stages God Fist, but it was all in vain when all his attacks were completely crushed by an average fist attack of Yi Shuwen. Stop! At this time, the old man, who was observing from the side, could not bear to watch anymore and directly shot his fists towards Yi Shuwen. This technique was 100 stages God Fist and was much more powerful than the 100 stages God Fist of young city lord. The terrifying might of this technique, accumulated over so many years, was finally displayed instantaneously. Chapter 172, Pre-War Preparation. 100 Stages. God Fist was a very widespread fist technique. It was not just popular in Yuncheng, but also in other sects as well, and what this old man just used was an advanced version of this fist technique. Apparently, this old man had practiced it to a very profound level. 100 Stages. God Fist, 100 times invincibility. Within the scope of 100 Stages. God Fist, the might was invincible. It would take a very brave soul to engage in a close combat with this old man. As a master of the second stage of Truth Realm, the might of this old man was far more than the might of that young city lord. The air began to explode each time their fists collided. One could also see that the space had begun to crack from these collisions. However, it was still not enough. Yi Xuan sneered, and just like before, he once again threw an average fist against the 100 Stages God Fist. The Quan Jin released from the 100 Stages God Fist was just like a paper stick in front of the average fist of Yi Xuan and was instantly broken. The massive Zhen Yuan released from that average fist of Yi Xuan instantly pressed down towards that old man. It could be said that Yi Xuan was tuned to immediate action. This statement was most correct to describe him. How is this possible? The old man looked incredibly at Yi Xuan. After all, Yi Xuan was merely at the first stage of Truth Realm, but the quantity of Zhen Yuan he was displaying was really abnormal and out of the comprehension of a master at the first stage of Truth Realm. Perhaps, not even a giant demon beast at the first stage of Truth Realm would not possess such a massive and profound amount of Zhen Yuan. It should not be possible for a human to possess such a vigorous Zhen Yuan. The amount of Zhen Yuan housed in the body was certainly related with the size of the body. There was a greater amount of Zhen Yuan within a massive body, so it was obvious that battles would be advantageous for those who possessed greater amount of Zhen Yuan. However, all along, humans never possessed profound and massive amount of Zhen Yuan like the demon beasts. They were known to utilize the superiority of human wisdom to gain advantage over demon beasts. Humans relied on endless variety of secret martial arts and were able to suppress the demon beasts. This was also the reason how human beings had managed to achieve dominance over the continent. And Yi Xuan was obviously not like other humans. After having practiced the tyrant's body technique, the meridians within his body had been expanded to the extreme, several times more than that of the ordinary people. One must know that Yi Xuan was able to completely absorb and digest the nadins of so many monstrous deepwater black serpents, so it was obvious that the meridians within his body had already widened to the most extreme extent. Humph! Yi Xuan sneered. His Zhen Yuan was so vigorous and profound that it was enough to finish most of the masters at the third stage of Truth Realm, let alone of this old man, who was only at the second stage of Truth Realm. Boom! Yi Zaiwen's fist contained an irresistible force. After it eradicated the 100 Stages God Fist and fiercely rumbled on the fist of that old man. Kara! Soon, a heart-penetrating sound of breaking bones resounded, and right after that, the old man groaned with pain. His arm was broken, twisted at a strange angle and hanging down. His skinny face was covered with numerous beads of cold sweat. As if there was storm rampaging in the old man's heart, he had practiced the 100-stage God Fists to the level of perfection, which was quite profound, and he was naturally very confident on the strength and sturdiness of his arm, but he did not expect a fist. Just an average fist of Yi Xuan, without any skill or technique, was able to crush his entire arm. But looking at the young appearance of Yi Xuan, he couldn't help but shiver a bit. After all, there was a heaven and earth difference between their strengths. The old man was suddenly very depressed because he didn't know, in the end, what kind of body refining technique had Yi Xuan practiced to achieve such a terrifying strength. He certainly did not know that Yi Xuan had practiced tyrant body technique, and how overbearing and invincible strength it could grant to the practitioner. It was the technique practiced and developed by the ancient tyrants themselves. Yi Xuan did not continue to pursue the fight with the old man, just looked coldly at the young city lord. The young city lord's face was immediately covered in cold sweat. Even the bodyguards of his family had terrified expressions on their faces. They clearly knew that if old man was not the match of Yi Xuan, they could obviously not take on this opponent. They finally realized that they had made the biggest mistake of provoking a formidable person. The opposite party was a true disciple of Yi Yuan school. His status was not one bit less than the status of young city lord. True disciples were considered elite geniuses, treasures in Yi Yuan school. Based on the ranks, young city lord and Yi Xuan should be worthy opponents to each other, but when the actual strength was taken into consideration, even though both of them were at the first stage of truth realm, young city lord could barely resist against Yi Xuan a moment ago, so it was now obvious to everyone that Yi Xuan was far more stronger than the young city lord. Let's go. Yi Xuan was not in a mood to waste time dealing with these people. Along with Hua Menghan, he directly went towards the station of Yi Yuan School's team. Looking at their departing figures, the complexion on the face of that young city lord began to gradually become pale. He had never been treated like this before and he had never been defeated like this as well. I want him dead, I want him dead. The young city lord roared. Yi Xuan, why are you in such a hurry this time? Hua Menghan asked. I got the news. Bai Majiao has been colluding with the forces in the surrounding areas and intends to perform a surprise attack on the gathering of 5 big forces of Great Yu State. Yi Xuan said. Earlier, he came to know from Hua Menghan that deputy head of Yi Yuan School would not come, and now he was more determined about the news he heard, so it was truly right. Bai Majiao was really going to make a big move this time. Both of them were martial artists, although the coastline was from Yi Yuan School's station, but they were very fast, and not after a while, they returned to the station of Yi Yuan School. Sister Hua. Sister Hua. Brother Yi. The disciples of Yi Yuan School respectfully gave their regards to the two, especially when they saw Yi Xuan. There were looks of astonishment on their faces. Now, Yi Zaiwen's strength had already been recognized by everyone. This was the strength of a true disciple, although he had not yet become a true disciple, but the core disciples could no longer dare to address him casually, they could only call him respectfully as Brother Yi Xuan. They went all the way and soon saw their team leader, Qi Fifan. Qi Fifan was leaning against the window, the sunlight was shining on his golden hair and reflected soft bursts of golden light. Seeing Qi Fifan once again, he did not appear like the way he was when he was fighting that giant devil, because this time, there was a harmless and peaceful look on his face. There was faint smile spread on his handsome face. Yi Xuan secretly sighed. No wonder they said that even if Qi Fifan was one of the 4 strongest true disciples, but if the popularity was taken into consideration, he was actually the best, although he joined the ranks late. So in terms of support from the elders, he was as good as the other 3, but in the hearts of ordinary disciples, his popularity was far more than the other 3. Sister Hua, you seem so anxious to see me, what's the matter? Qi Fifan said. Brother Qi, Yi Xuan he has something important to inform you. Hua Menghan said respectfully. Yi Xuan greets Brother Qi. Yi Xuan cupped his hands and said, although the strength of both of them was at the truth realm, the status should also be equal, but the last time, Qi Fifan saved him and his friends, how could Yi Xuan forget that? I am deeply grateful for your help last time. Oh, I guess you are one of the disciples from the Thousand Islands City. Qi Fifan finally remembered, but at the time, Yi Xuan was just an ordinary disciple, especially in the eyes of Qi Fifan, who was at the half-step legendary level. However, seeing Yi Xuan again this time, he could not look the other way, and now, Yi Zaiwen's strength had actually reached the truth realm and his breath was even above a master at the 2nd stage of truth realm. Looking at someone with such strength, how could he not pay attention? Regarding Yi Xuan, these days, even he had heard of his miraculous growth rate and rapid enhancement of strength and cultivation, breaking his own records, which made Yi Xuan the new myth of Yi Yuan School. Many disciples of the younger generation idolized Yi Xuan and regarded him as an example. Moreover, there were many rumors that Yi Xuan was arrogant and despotic. He did not even pay attention to the elders and looked down upon them, but after meeting him in person, Qi Fifan realized that it was not like it. One should not completely believe the rumors. Brother Qi has such a good memory. I would have come early to express gratitude but got tied down by many matters. Yi Xuan said. No big deal. Qi Fifan said as if it didn't matter. Young Yi, what's this matter you want to inform me about? This time, I accidentally learned about the plans of Bai Majiao. Yi Shiwen told him about the things he overheard, but he would certainly not elaborate about his own transformation into a deep-water black serpent and other things he didn't want others to find out, so he vaguely passed on the information he obtained, without going into detail. But Qi Fifan did not pay attention to these either. Hearing the report from Yi Shiwen, Qi Fifan frowned and said, "Young Yi, you have discovered a very important thing. I will inform the higher authorities about it, but no matter what, this time, we must conduct this gathering." This gathering was not just a way for the five forces to show their strengths but also a method to show their collective strength to other small and big influences of Great Yu State. Even if Bai Mojiao was going to attack them, they could not cancel the gathering. Because even if Bai Mojiao's raid is rendered unsuccessful or they did not do it, then there was a chance that other forces might be ready to make trouble. Yi Shiwen can feel a terrifying pressure coming down towards Yi Yuan School. In order to suppress the strong alliance of the five major forces, Bai Mojiao would definitely have to do something big. Things won't be so simple then. Lu Hongwei, I have never fought with him before. Qi Fifan immediately said with a smile on his face. The previous uprising of Bai Mojiao occurred 100 years ago, and during that turmoil, he was not even born at that time. Among the present strongest four true disciple, only he had not fought with Lu Hongwei, but looking at the illustrious reputation of Lu Hongwei, he always wanted to fight with him. Qi Fifan already confessed that he would not lose to anyone else, even if he was late to join the ranks of the strongest four true disciples. It was not an excuse for him. The gathering of the five forces must continue, but they needed to prepare before. If they didn't know about it then it was a different matter, but now that already knew about the attack in advance, they naturally could not ignore it. They must prepare to teach those bastards of Bai Mojiao a profound lesson, otherwise it would be a waste of the news brought by Yi Shiwen. After informing Qi Fifan about this matter, there was nothing to worry about. Yi Shiwen finished this thing and soon bid farewell to Qi Fifan. He went to the courtyard reserved for him and began to prepare for closed-door practice. He simply didn't care about the inner disciples' competition. Only after the Bai Mojiao's attack would he really start caring about other things. Chapter 173, Rise to Fame. Yi Shiwen did not want to look for trouble, but it did not mean that trouble won't look for him or his friends. When Yi Shiwen was indulged in closed-door practice, overnight, a news spread throughout Qianji Island and all the five forces paid attention to it. Did you hear the latest news? 8th Prince is aiming for that Yi Shiwen of Yi Yuan School. We may be able to see a stunning battle between the two. What? 8th Prince, the universally invincible genius of this generation from the royal clan. He is considered invincible even among the peer disciples of the royal clan, but why is he aiming for Yi Shiwen? Oh right, who is this Yi Shiwen anyway? Till yesterday, even I didn't know who this Yi Shiwen actually is, but today, I finally found out about his identity. The supremeness of 8th Prince is widely known among the younger generation of royal clan. His followers can be seen throughout the five forces and various other large and small forces. He has also formed his own army by the name Imperial Guards, which claims to dominate the entire world. But that Yi Shiwen recently rose to fame in Yi Yuan School as an invincible genius, it is said that he has broken the records of the legendary genius, Qi Fifan, of Yi Yuan School. Just like Qi Fifan, Yi Shiwen is also considered a mythical figure, a myth in his sect. But I heard that 8th Prince was chasing down a devil and has gone inside the space crack. Why did he challenge Yi Shiwen right on? I also just heard that the 8th Prince chased down the devil all the way inside the space crack and actually discovered the remains of some treasure. He gained enormous benefit from it, and now has come back from there. As to say why he challenged Yi Shiwen right on, the reason is very simple. The 8th Prince is very ambitious. He actually wants to conquer the entire world, dominate all of the landscape, then bring the entire Great Yu State under the rule of the royal clan. He is also known as universally invincible, wants to defeat all the rivals in the younger generation one by one, and after that, he will even challenge Qi Fifan and the older invincible masters of the older generation. It is said that the 8th Prince had once fought with Luo Yifan, but now, Luo Yifan is dead, and rumors are that it was actually Yi Shiwen who killed Luo Yifan, which aroused the interest of 8th Prince. I heard that 8th Prince issued the declaration of challenge right from the Azura battlefield, which arrived now. Eighth Prince is universally invincible. Among the disciples of same age, perhaps only Jian Wuchen of Yunqing should be able to compete with him. Yes, but it's ironic enough that Jian Wuchen belongs to a slave clan, but even so, he was able to achieve the reputation of strongest disciple among the younger generation of Yunqing, and it's just like a slap in the face of those who belong to the strongest clans of Yunqing and possess noble blood. This is just like the collision between the most noble blood and lowly cheap blood. Don't forget, in addition to Jian Wuchen of Yunqing, Mu Yuren of Shuling sect and Yan Xiaoba of Tianfeng Hall are also considered the top players among the younger generation, over the past decade. The rise of a genius in the younger generation was the most crucial matter for Yi Yuan school among the five forces, although there is Qi Fifan and 3 other peerless masters among the older generation, but none of disciples in the younger generation were splendid enough to be added to this list. Although Luo Yifan was an outstanding master, but his strength was undoubtedly still not comparable to the others. Then suddenly, this Yi Xuan came to limelight out of nowhere. Eighth Prince is ambitious, he wants to wipe out all of the experts of the younger generation and lead his imperial guards to sweep the entire world under the royal clan's rule. I do not know how Yi Xuan will be able to resist the moves of the Eighth Prince. Suddenly, the news about the legendary Eighth Prince personally challenging Yi Xuan spread like forest fire, and in a short time, Yi Zaiwen's fame spread among the various forces. Although originally, Yi Xuan had defeated Luo Yifan in a one-on-one battle, but he also set a remarkable record in Yi Yuan school by breaking the records of Qi Fifan. Not to mention, too much time had passed since then and Yi Xuan preferred to have a relatively low-key status, so his fame was limited only in Yi Yuan school, and almost nobody in the other sects knew about his exploits in Yi Yuan school, but the open challenge of the Eighth Prince suddenly pushed Yi Zaiwen's fame all the way to the top. Yi Zaiwen's image as one of the notable figures in the younger generation began to embed in the hearts of countless people, but even so, no one was optimistic about his victory. After all, the Eighth Prince had been famous for almost a decade. When he began to become famous, perhaps Yi Xuan had not even started practicing martial arts. Although regarding martial artists, the time gap of 10 years was not too much. When compared to the time of over 100 years, the time period of 10 years didn't seem much significant, but as far as Yi Zaiwen's age was concerned, the last 10 years were sufficient to cause a fatal disparity of several years. Moreover, Eighth Prince had deeply infiltrated everyone's heart. Even if he and Yi Xuan were of same age, no one would really be optimistic about Yi Xuan, let alone knowing that Yi Xuan was several years younger than him. Although they could be counted as peers, but the age gap was significant to cause a disparity in their strengths. In fact, none of the various forces were optimistic about Yi Xuan, which also made some people of Yi Yuan school secretly angry. Originally, Yi Xuan was not pleasing to the eyes of everyone. There were many people who did not like the way Yi Xuan gained sudden fame, but this was a matter related to the honor of Yi Yuan school, and just because of that, many of them were standing on the side of Yi Xuan and speaking in his favor. Even if sects could inherit resources generations after generations, they always tend to keep an eye constantly on the performance of the younger generation, especially in the case of Yi Yuan school, which held the heritage of so many years and also had a lot of talented disciples. But even so, unlike other sects where outstanding talents took birth in the younger generation in the past decade, Yi Yuan school seemed to have only one hope, Luo Yifan, in their younger generation who could hold a chance of contending with the Eighth Prince. Although Luo Yifan was regarded as splendid in Yi Yuan school's younger generation, but when compared to strongest disciples of younger generation in other sects, the discerning eyes could easily see the disparity. But they were not optimistic about Yi Xuan even if he had defeated Luo Yifan, because they assumed that perhaps Yi Xuan was only slightly stronger than him and was definitely not the opponent of the Eighth Prince. However, the open challenge from the Eighth Prince to have a duel with Yi Xuan still made them feel incomparably aggrieved, because the Eighth Prince, Jian Wuchen, Mu Yuran and other top figures in the younger generation of the major forces were considered at the helm of the younger generation of their respective sects, and the major sects, intentionally or unintentionally, never allowed them to have direct confrontation. Everyone felt that these top figures would eventually step into the legendary realm in the future and might go even farther, and perhaps then, they might collide in the future to determine the winner, but fighting now was somewhat early. However, The eighth prince causally announced the challenge and brought this to light that he would beat Yi Shiwen, which clearly explained that he looked down on Yi Shiwen, and radically speaking, the eighth prince did not consider Yi Shiwen as his equal. In his eyes, Yi Shiwen simply did not qualify to be his match, but Yi Shiwen was already considered the strongest in this younger generation of Yi Yuan school after he defeated Luo Yifan. Now that he disregarded Yi Shiwen and basically looked down on him, he also looked down on the entire Yi Yuan school, so even if they were not optimistic about Yi Shiwen, but overwhelming majorities were still in his favor. Eighth prince is not that great. If Yi Shiwen had practiced for few more years, he could easily beat the eighth prince. Yes, if eighth prince thinks he is strong, he should fight with our brother Qi. After all, just like he is older than Yi Shiwen, brother Qi is older than him. There were some people who turned to Qi Fifan. Brother Qi, stop their duel, it is so unfair for brother Yi Shiwen. Yes, if given few more years to a talent like brother Yi Shiwen, he should be able to compete with this opponent. Yi Shiwen might not be pleasing to their eyes, but this matter was directly linked with the honor of Yi Yuan school, hence it was closely linked with them as well, and they were well aware that its outcome would not be a good one. But Qi Fifan had not made an appearance, because at this time, he was discussing the matter about Bai Ma Jiao with the leaders of other forces. However, from the beginning, since this matter came to light, many of the inner disciples, core disciples, and even some true disciples could not sit still. The deterrence of eighth prince was not just for the disciples of younger generation, it was like a thorn in the back even for the true disciples of the older generation. It was just like disregarding the opinion of Yi Yuan school altogether, which immediately made them angry. Eighth prince had always been rejecting the challenges from the younger generation of Yi Yuan school and once fought with Luo Yifan and almost missed from completely crippling him. If he had succeeded in crippling Luo Yifan, he would have completely cut off the one and only hope of Yi Yuan school, since Luo Yifan was considered the strongest in the younger generation. But now, Luo Yifan was dead and Yi Shiwen suddenly gained fame, so eighth prince decided to personally beat him and announce the beginning of his domination. Now, on Qianji Island, only Qi Fifan was capable of stopping their duel. However, the very first sentence that came out of Qi Fifan's mouth was, "This generation's conquest will advance." Obviously, Qi Fifan did not want to prevent the duel, moreover it was apparent from his words that he seemed optimistic about Yi Shiwen, which shocked many people. Regarding Qi Fifan's vision and decision, no one would suspect because his very existence itself was like a legend and mythical. If his rise to fame had been somewhat late, then perhaps, he would belong to the generation of the eighth prince, Jian Wuchen, and the others. In that case, he would be the only genius in his generation, like the one and only sun in the sky, filled with radiance, and all others would be overshadowed by his existence. This was the reason why even the other top 4 true disciples of Yi Yuan school were scared of him, not to mention the eighth prince and the other strongest disciples of younger generation. However, in his generation, no one was able to reach his brilliance for decades. He was recognized as the first master of his generation, no one could compete with him, so later he was placed in the older generation and was allowed to join the ranks of top 4 true disciples of Yi Yuan school. His words suddenly shocked everyone, as if they heard something wrong when Qi Fifan said in favor of Yi Shiwen, but eighth prince was already at the 4th stage of Truth Realm and there were rumors that he recently obtained some treasures and other great benefits and would soon step into the 5th stage of Truth Realm. Rumors were that he obtained some ancient relics and treasure which were enough to help him overwhelm all his peers and rivals. Why Yi Shiwen? What made Qi Fifan say in favor of Yi Ziwen's victory? Did he actually think that Yi Shiwen could turn out to be a rival of the eighth prince? Chapter 174, Simply Worthless. This time, the leaders of all segments of social strata among the younger generation of the 5 forces had gathered in Qianji Island. The news about the eighth prince openly challenging Yi Shiwen for a duel quickly set off the speculations of a lot of people. Even the only speculation of the disciples of Yi Yuan school was that Yi Shiwen would be able to block a few moves of the eighth prince at the best. No one really thought that he would be able to contend with the eighth prince. Defeat the eighth prince? The very concept of defeat simply never existed in their thoughts. For a time, no one paid attention to the forthcoming meeting of the 5 forces. Everyone was discussing this matter about the duel between the eighth prince and Yi Shiwen. After all, 8th Prince was considered as the strongest existence among the younger generation of all the forces, so no matter what he did, it always ended up becoming the object of attention for countless people. He rushed to his current illustrious prestige in a short time of 10 years and was now at the helm of the younger generation. He almost did not have a rival. He was ambitious and wanted to compete for the throne of Great State and become the next emperor. For that, he needed to sweep away all the other major forces and establish a more centralized influence of royal clan in the Great State. Regarding this matter, he never tried to conceal it, and in fact, even his slogan clearly showed that he was ambitious to win over the entire state. He formed a party of 8, and all of these 8 outstanding masters were known as Imperial Guards. He simply regarded himself as the next emperor of Great State, and his Imperial Guards were just like the personal guards of the emperor. He dared to call his subordinates as Imperial Guards, and their motto was to conquer the world and bring it under the royal clan's rule. No one knew the real reason behind it, but his group had already been recognized by the Great State's emperor. Yi Shiwen did not know whether to laugh or cry when he listened to the people's discussion outside. What was wrong with these people? When he said that he would accept the challenge, it was as if it was already decided and no one was going to ask his opinion or decision. It seemed as if he did not have the right to say anything and would have to comply with the command of the 8th Prince. Without even asking him, it seemed like his duel with the 8th Prince had already been scheduled. What was going on? There really didn't seem any respect for his opinion. No one seemed to really care about his opinion. Everyone was fully convinced that since 8th Prince challenged Yi Shiwen, then he would certainly have to accept the challenge. This strange logic simply left Yi Shiwen in a situation where he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In fact, a lot of people thought that since the 8th Prince had already announced his challenge, even if Yi Shiwen was not his match, whatever might be the outcome of this duel, being the most outstanding disciple in the younger generation of Yi Yuan school, he should not be able to decline this challenge. Thereupon, everyone was considering this thing as a matter of fact. Yi Shiwen was sincerely mad at this. He was being regarded as an insignificant existence, as if he really didn't have the fundamental right to make his own decisions, and no one seemed to care about what he was thinking. Just because the 8th Prince openly challenged him, he had no choice but to comply and engage in a duel with him. At noon, the sunlight was shining on the earth, distorting the atmosphere. Things looked blurred from afar. The battle declaration was handed down right in front of Yi Shiwen. 8th Prince has sent us to relay this battle declaration to you. 3 months later, he would personally visit Yi Yuan school to have a duel with you. Be prepared by that time. Out of the 3 people who came with the battle declaration, the black-robed youth looked at Yi Shiwen and said, 8th Prince was not an ordinary overbearing and rampant guy. This battle declaration was to play with the minds of the disciples of Yi Yuan school. At least, his motive was to make sure there were no rival disciples in his generation, and new rivals were to appear. He would destroy them before become threats to his ultimate plan. It was a well-known matter, but the place of their duel was actually going to be Yi Yuan school, which was just a way to mock someone on their face. It was a blatant way to mock someone. Later, Yi Shiwen came to know that these 3 people were actually not the disciples of the royal clan. They were actually the outstanding figures of other major forces. The name of this black-robed youth was Jiao Shufeng, an outstanding disciple of Tianfeng Hall. Long ago, he became renowned as a strong true disciple and was quite formidable. This time, he was representing Tianfeng Hall and was going to compete in the competition of true disciples. Another handsome man around the age of 25 or 26 years was standing behind him. He was clad in an orange robe and was called Lu Hao, one of the talented disciples of Yunqing. He was also very formidable and was going to represent Yunqing in the competition of true disciples. And the last one was a woman, clad in white clothes, looked very pretty, and her name was Jean Linger. She was actually a disciple of Yi Yuan school and was widely known among the disciples of Yi Yuan school. There were many disciples who admired her very much. In fact, it could be said that she had innumerable admirers in Yi Yuan school, but no one expected her to be a member of Imperial Guards. Jiao Shufeng spoke, but from the look in his eyes, he did not seem to be paying attention to Yi Shiwen at all, as if he was here just to issue the declaration of duel and Yi Shiwen would certainly accept it. "I'm not interested." Yi Shiwen suddenly smiled and said. "What, you?" Jiao Shufeng suddenly said. It seemed as if he never expected to get such a reply from Yi Shiwen. He never thought that Yi Shiwen would actually say that he did not have the slightest interest in it. Before coming to meet Yi Shiwen, he had imagined various scenarios, but he never expected Yi Shiwen to directly reject the 8th prince's declaration. He expected that either Yi Shiwen would be angry or terrified after receiving the declaration of duel, but he definitely did not expect it to get such an unexpected answer from Yi Shiwen, and that too in an indifferent manner. Immediately, the disciples in the surroundings gathered up to see what was going on, and when they heard Yi Ziwen's reply, dumbfounded looks appeared on their faces. A sudden uproar occurred in the crowd. They could clearly see that this Yi Shiwen was no less rampant than the 8th prince. Everyone was aware of the arrogance and domineering attitude of the 8th prince. If he said he wanted to fight with someone, that person would have no other choice but to obediently comply. His arrogance could be seen in the very fact that he openly challenged Yi Shiwen even if he knew that Yi Shiwen was not his match, without caring about Yi Ziwen's opinion. In fact, if there was someone more powerful than Yi Shiwen in the younger generation of Yi Yuan school, then perhaps, he would not even look at Yi Shiwen. This was the kind of arrogance he had, which was enough to make him dominate the entire world. However, this seemingly casual remark of Yi Shiwen showed that he was no interested, implying that he was much more aggressive than the 8th prince. Yi Ziwen's words implied as if who was this 8th prince, he never heard of some 8th prince, why should he care about this declaration of duel? There could be no better valid and powerful comeback than this. Yi Shiwen finished saying, then turned around to walk away. But, suddenly, a loud shout came from behind him, "Stop!" Lu Hao arrived in front of Yi Shiwen and said, "And you still call yourself a man? You are actually trying to run away. Do you want to become a laughingstock in front of everyone?" Yi Shiwen disdainfully smiled because he knew that today, if he turned around to leave, then it was not going to be him who would become the laughingstock but the 8th prince. People were too lazy to understand what was hidden in the words of Lu Hao. It could be said that these were coarse words and Lu Hao seemed to be speaking for Yi Shiwen, but in actuality, he was speaking for the 8th prince. Somehow, it is none of your business. Yi Shiwen squeezed out these words from the gap between his teeth and it sounded unusually disdaining. What did you say? A coward like you, who wants to run away from a fight, actually dares to be so arrogant. I see, so you must be afraid of His Highness. Lu Hao said. Yes, Yi Shiwen, you want to flee without a fight, then do so, but it will hurt the reputation of our Yi Yuan school, and after this, how you think will others see the disciples of our Yi Yuan school? At this time, the female disciple named Jean Linger suddenly said. Humph. What utter nonsense. Yi Shiwen coldly smiled and said, you seem so concerned about how others will see our Yi Yuan school, but don't worry, the disciples of Yi Yuan school are proper and prideful, they don't need to go to someone else and work like their dog. But sometimes I think, if our Yi Yuan school had such a disciple, I wonder how other people will see our Yi Yuan school. You. The face of Jean Linger suddenly flushed with anger, she gritted her teeth and her eyes looked straight at Yi Shiwen as if she would tear him to shreds with her vision itself. She had never hated a man so much in her life because Yi Shiwen actually likened her with a dog. She never felt that there was something wrong following a strong person, after all strength was the ultimate law in this world, not to mention the 8th prince was considered a peerless master and she held supreme honor as his follower, but all of this was torn to pieces by the few words of Yi Shiwen. The looks in the eyes of several disciples standing in the surroundings suddenly changed, because they had never thought about it in such a way, but after listening to what Yi Shiwen said just now, it seemed correct. What imperial guards, weren't they working like dogs for someone else? Still the most loyal dogs. This also made her simultaneously feel ashamed and resentful towards Yi Shiwen, it seemed as if they wanted to kill Yi Shiwen then and there to vent their hatred. Yi Shiwen, if you are scared, kneel down and kowtow, then I will ask our 8th prince to let you off. Jean Linger said viciously. She wanted that Yi Shiwen must kneel down and kowtow in order to crush his invincible heart, and only then she would be able to calm her anger down a little. What an idiot! Yi Shiwen coldly smiled then turned around to walk away. What 8th prince? I have never heard of him, if he wants to fight with me, it's very simple, tell him to come in person and challenge me. If he likes to put on airs, then he should stop thinking that these things would have any effect on me." The whole crowd was in uproar after hearing this. After all, the words of Yi Shiwen were a direct hit on the 8th prince's face, and saying what 8th prince in front of so many people was like a directly insult to the 8th prince. This completely angered the 3 members of the Imperial Guards. "I know that he is afraid. Our 8th prince is the strongest character in the younger generation, and he is just an ant-like ordinary guy in front of him. Now, he has certainly gained a clear understanding of his own pathetic existence." Lu Hao said in a harsh tone. "Yi Shiwen, you are really very scared, aren't you?" Jiao Shufeng looked at Yi Shiwen and said. "Your foolish attempt to instigate me into action won't work." Yi Shiwen indifferently said. "Do not think that I am like you people. Perhaps for you all, this 8th prince is everything, a god-like existence or something, but as far as I am concerned, he is simply worthless." Chapter 175, He is also a ruthless man. Your foolish attempt to instigate me into action won't work. Yi Shiwen indifferently said. "Do not think that I am like you people. Perhaps for you all, this 8th prince is everything, a god-like existence or something, but as far as I am concerned, he is simply worthless." The crowd was in uproar. This was probably the first time someone dared to say something like this, which implied that the 8th prince could simply not be considered as someone if any important personage. This showed that Yi Shiwen was not just ordinarily rampant as they thought. Although they were full aware of the domineering and arrogant attitude of the 8th prince, but they just did not expect that the seemingly calm rampancy of Yi Shiwen would actually be far more intense than that of the 8th prince. However, in such a short time, Yi Shiwen was able to emerge as a peerless genius from Yi Yuan school, so if his disposition was modest and polite, then that would feel quite strange too. But they actually did not know that Yi Shiwen was not always rampant. He was rampant in front of his rampant enemies. "I knew that he will try to run away. Even the gods flinch in the presence of his highness, and the devils hide away," Lu Hao said, and it seemed as if he was determined to keep instigating Yi Shiwen. "It really is ridiculous. Even the gods flinch in his presence. Does he try to regard himself as the king of gods?" Yi Shiwen sneered. Of course, devils existed in this world, so it was not surprising to say that gods also existed in this world. Just listening to the things told by Yi Mo, he came to know that there were godlike existences in this world and they were capable of destroying the heaven itself, but it was quite hilarious to say that gods would flinch in the presence of the 8th prince. "No one can refuse the decree of his highness." Jiao Shufeng shouted in a cold voice and threw an envelope toward Yi Shiwen. In the midair, the envelope started to burn and revealed a domineering and overbearing string of pearl-like characters. Although it was just one word, but it seemed as if it would burn the eyes of the people who laid their eyes on it. Those who saw it only thought that they must kneel down in front of his dominating power and become his subjects. They must obey his command. This was the aura of a king. But unfortunately, Yi Shiwen was also an overbearing expert and was no inferior to any tyrant king. He himself possessed the terrifying aura of a tyrant warrior, was about to get involved, but suddenly, the characters written inside envelope quickly moved and folded up to transform into a mountain peak and instantly pressed towards Yi Shiwen. This mountain peak pressing down towards Yi Shiwen actually possessed a mighty imposing aura. Yi Shiwen immediately sensed that the law of the earth was in effect. It was as if a mountain was dropping from the heaven and it must crush Yi Shiwen. This was to test Yi Shiwen and prove that he was not eligible to accept the challenge, and there was actually a surging Jin Yuan hidden inside it. It was really quite rampant and despotic. However, although it was merely only condensed Jin Yuan, but was simply relentless, and it possessed strength almost comparable to the 3rd stage of the Truth Realm and instantly smashed down. Full Moon Beheader. Yi Shiwen did not dare to be negligent, although he could compete with masters at the 3rd stage of Truth Realm, but while facing this move, he would still need to concentrate with rapt attention. Boom! The blade light fiercely chopped down towards that word mountain peak. The two attacks deadlocked for a long time, but the blade light finally overpowered the coercion of that word mountain and directly chopped it down into pieces, dispersing golden light everywhere in the sky. Yi Shiwen did not have the frivolity, rather the strength of the 8th prince was quite spectacular, and he noticed some words written on that word mountain strongest of the younger generation, and these were not empty words. This 8th prince was very strong. Oh, it's not good. I never imagined that the 8th prince would actually be so strong. Even the battle declaration was so outrageously strong. I guess even the masters at the 3rd stage of Truth Realm will find it difficult to deal with this kind of strength. A Yi Yuan School's disciple said in a somewhat worried voice. At this time, except for a few people, most of the disciples of Yi Yuan School were still biased in favor of one of their own, Yi Shiwen. After all, this matter was related to Yi Yuan School's glory. Luckily, Yi Shiwen is not some ordinary guy. That blade attack was amazing. I heard that he has recently turned 20 years old and has already stepped into the Truth Realm. Considering this level of talent, he is not inferior to the 8th prince. If he is given few years, he should be able to contend with the 8th prince. Another disciple said. If Yi Zaiwen's fame rises, the younger generation of our Yi Yuan school will not lose to the other sects. However, I am afraid that the 8th prince will not give him the time to grow. Isn't this the style of the 8th prince to suppress all enemies before they grow stronger? Yes, if it is that Jian Wuchen fighting with Yi Shiwen, then it may seem fair, but why is the 8th prince so fixated on him? The 8th prince's ambitions have no limits. He wants the entire Great Yu state to fall under the rule of the royal clan. He doesn't even want to accommodate a force like Yi Yuan School and wants to suppress all his future obstacles, including those who are yet to grow up. Many of the disciples of Yi Yuan School were worried, though they clearly recognized the strength of the 8th prince, but regarding his character, it was not easy to say. With such a mediocre strength, you actually dare to be so rampant. Lu Hao sneered and immediately taunted after he saw Yi Shiwen having some difficulty while dealing with the 8th prince's gift. Naturally, he was very proud of himself because according to him, the members of the Imperial Guards were far superior to other truth-level masters. Their leader was the strongest in the younger generation. In fact, most people were not even qualified to become the Imperial Guards. It was not easy to become the Imperial Guards. Enough with your nonsense. Yi Shiwen was quite unhappy. This 8th prince was not an ordinary rampant guy. Considering the way he used the open battle declaration in front of everyone, now it did not matter whether Yi Shiwen wanted to fight or not, he must accept it. Yi Shiwen was sure that the opposite party would certainly direct it towards Yi Yuan School's reputation regardless of whether he would comply or not. Yi Shiwen was not just representing himself, but he was also representing the entire Yi Yuan School in this matter. It was time for Yi Shiwen to make the decision whether he should accept it or not. If he didn't, then everyone would say that Yi Shiwen was afraid and backed out. This was tantamount to force him to accept this battle declaration, which made Yi Shiwen him extremely unhappy. You are courting death. Why His Highness should dirty his hands and deal with you when I can personally repress you? Lu Hao was thoroughly mad at the attitude of Yi Shiwen. You don't deserve to accept His Highness' battle declaration. When Yi Shiwen heard him, without wasting any time, he instantly took a step, and suddenly, a burst of Jin Yuan, like the raging wild sea waves, instantly swept toward Lu Hao. Yi Shiwen released a surge of Jin Yuan which was so huge that it was easily comparable with the masters at the 3rd stage of Truth Realm, while Lu Hao was merely a master at the 2nd stage of Truth Realm. At this time, Lu Hao and the others finally understood that although Yi Shiwen seemingly was at the 1st stage of Truth Realm, but looking at his terrifying Jin Yuan which could easily submerge them like a raging ocean, it was easy to guess that his strength was much more than what it appeared to be. This could not be the strength of a man, he was simply a humanoid demon beast. The endless amount of Jin Yuan, just like a mighty hammer, instantly and fiercely blasted on Lu Hao's body. Poof! Lu Hao screamed pitifully and his entire body was sent flying into the sky. The crowd of onlookers suddenly swallowed a mouthful of saliva and held their breaths. Just now they witnessed the stunning strength of the 8th prince from just the battle declaration envelope, and it was actually able to have such strength. But now, they found out that Yi Shiwen must not be underestimated and his actually strength was much more than they anticipated. As a master at the 1st stage of Truth Realm, he was able to actually release such mighty waves of Jin Yuan, which sent a 2nd stage Truth level master like Lu Hao flying into the sky. At this time, the disciples of Yi Yuan school were having a kind of mixed feelings in their hearts. They were happy from the performance of Yi Shiwen. It was really too aggressive and was nothing like a master at the first stage of Truth Realm. He actually managed to suppress a genius like Lu Hao, who was at the second stage of Truth Realm, and actually sent him flying in one shot. This fighting strength was simply ferocious, as if he was a humanoid demon beast. There simply was no comparison between Yi Shiwen and Luo Yifan. Because Luo Yifan was merely at the first stage of Truth Realm and Yi Ziwen's strength was comparable with the masters at the third stage of Truth Realm, no wonder there were rumors that Yi Shiwen had defeated Luo Yifan in one-on-one battle. In fact, there were even rumors that Luo Yifan's death was also related to Yi Shiwen. Rumors said that after receiving the message, Yi Shiwen went after Luo Yifan to kill him. Even after investigating, both Yi Yuan School and Tianfeng Hall were unable to get any evidence against Yi Shiwen, but this rumor had been spreading since then. Many people were saying that it was actually Yi Shiwen who killed Luo Yifan. Contradiction between Luo Yifan and Yi Shiwen was already an open secret and everyone knew about it. Luo Yifan tried several times to intercept Yi Shiwen, sometimes personally or by sending people after him. The news about these things had already spread throughout Yi Yuan School. There was no room for either party to back out from the fact that both parties wanted to kill each other. In order to stamp out the root of future trouble, it was very natural for Yi Shiwen to kill Luo Yifan. Things like this happened all this time. Although no one had the direct evidence to prove that Yi Shiwen killed Luo Yifan, but they were greatly suspicious of him. Therefore, reportedly, it was said that Luo clan was furious and were planning to kill Yi Shiwen, but the top-level officials of the sect disagreed since Yi Shiwen was just a suspect and there was no exact evidence to prove that he killed Luo Yifan. Not to mention, along with Luo Yifan, there were two other truth-level masters, and therefore, a lot of people concluded that it was impossible for Yi Shiwen to simultaneously deal with three masters of the Truth Realm, considering that one of them was at the second stage of Truth Realm. However, after Yi Shiwen exposed his true strength just now, everybody was shaken because his real strength was simply unfathomable and was much more terrifying and profound than anticipated. With this much strength, it should be easily to kill Luo Yifan and the other truth-level masters. But some time had passed since the incident, so the strength alone could not be solid evidence. After all, how could ordinary mortals possibly find the traces of clues when the evidence and traces of clues were personally erased by Yi Mo, an ancient monster that had lived for innumerable years? The thing to worry was that now when Yi Shiwen exhibited such a high talent, the 8th prince would certainly not give up because in order to dominate the entire Great Yu state, the rise of a talent like Yi Shiwen would be a huge threat to his future plans and must be eradicated as soon as possible. And this was going to be an honest excuse to get rid of Yi Shiwen, so he naturally would not miss it. Chapter 176 Imperial Guards are mediocre. The disciples of Yi Yuan School were having mixed feelings and were happy and worried at the same time. There were excited looks on their faces while they were guessing that perhaps Yi Shiwen might block several moves. Moreover, the majority of people guessed that Yi Shiwen would be able to block only 10 or so moves. In fact, there were a lot of people who thought that he won't be able to block even a single move. In that case, it was too boring because Yi Shiwen would be no different than several other outstanding geniuses, already trampled and crushed by the 8th prince. And then, there sincerely was no meaning to all of this anyway. However, at this time, Yi Shiwen actually showed the strength far more than they imagined. They discovered how ruthless he actually was. Moreover, not just ruthlessness, they also saw the terrifying strength of Yi Shiwen with their own eyes. It could be said that perhaps, even the strength possessed by the masters at the third stage of Truth Realm would be far less than his strength. And after 3 months, no one knew to what extent his strength might grow, and this was definitely a very interesting thing, which would definitely lead to an unusual but interesting battle, and should not be boring at that time. You dared to injure Lu Hao. Do you plan to defy the Imperial Guards? Jean Linger looked incredibly at Yi Shiwen. Do you actually think that the members of Imperial Guards are a waste like Luo Yifan? If not for His Highness' wish to personally deal with you, any one of us Imperial Guards can easily trample him. Jean Linger looked coldly at Yi Shiwen. You have put your family in trouble. they will die without the burial ground. Well, 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 now you have done it, Imperial Guards. Yi Shiwen sneered, you are nothing but a bunch of 8th Prince's dogs and you actually dare to threaten me. The Imperial Guards didn't know that they just now invoked the wrath of the Emperor. The talk about Yi Zaiwen's family being in danger was more than enough to invite the wrath of the Emperor. Seeing a ruthless look flashing in Yi Zaiwen's eyes, Zhao Shufeng quickly understood that something bad was about to happen. He was not like Jean Linger, who had always admired the 8th Prince, and any act of slandering the reputation of the 8th Prince was enough to enrage her. Yi Shiwen disrespected the 8th Prince several times and right in front of her, which thoroughly made her lose her mind. But Zhao Shufeng did not lose his temper because he knew that Yi Shiwen was very powerful, although Lu Hao was quite reckless. But the members of the Imperial Guards were not ordinary masters, they were overall geniuses including strength and skills, but Lu Hao was directly sent flying by a single attack from Yi Shiwen. What kind of fighting strength did this Yi Shiwen actually possess? This scene had shocked all the people present there because it was simply beyond the imagination of anyone. Yi Shiwen, we've come instead of His Highness to deliver the declaration of duel, we don't mean any harm. Zhao Shufeng stepped forward and immediately said. No harm. No harm you say, good one. Yi Shiwen laughed and said, first you threatened my family and now you even dare shouting in front of me. Since you want me to receive this declaration of duel no matter what, then I will, but in the meantime, I'd like to test the strength of the so-called Imperial Guards of the 8th Prince and see how much formidable they actually are. Yi Shiwen shouted and used the coiling dragon palm, which he had already practiced to the acme level. His palm turned into a dragon claw, glowing with a terrifying dragon chi, and instantly moved towards them. Yi Zaiwen's attack was extremely powerful when compared to before. He had already practiced the first 2 moves of coiling dragon palm to the acme level, and all of a sudden, he demonstrated the full might of this technique. In an instant, the dragon chi overflowed the surrounding area and it seemed as if a dragon had descended from the heaven to rule the world. In a blink of an eye, it arrived in front of Zhao Shufeng. Although, Zhao Shufeng was not willing to fight with Yi Shiwen at this time, but when he saw this attack coming towards him, he was left with no choice and he immediately shot his palm. However, his palm technique was extremely abstruse and both of their attack instantly collided. Although he was at the second stage of Truth Realm, but both his skill and strength were far inferior to those of Yi Shiwen, plus when it came to the palm techniques used by them, Zhao Shufeng's palm technique was nowhere close to the coiling dragon palm technique, and only in the moment, it seemed like Yi Zaiwen's attack contained an irresistible force that instantly crushed his attack and fiercely blasted on his body. Bang! Zhao Shufeng's whole body was blasted away and several of his bones were broken. He spouted a mouthful of blood and almost lost consciousness after falling and severely hitting the ground. Even so, the disciples of Tianfeng Hall who were standing in the surrounding didn't react or intercept when Yi Shiwen suddenly attacked Zhao Shufeng, a disciple of Tianfeng Hall. Moreover, this was not a fight between Yi Yuan School and Tianfeng Hall, but Yi Shiwen and the 8th Prince's Imperial Guards. In fact, even a disciple of Yi Yuan School, Jean Linger, was also a part of the Imperial Guards. Besides that, the disciples of Tianfeng Hall did not hold goodwill for Zhao Shufeng, because even if he was a disciple of Tianfeng Hall, he was still a member of Imperial Guards, and being a member of Imperial Guard was no different than betraying one's own sect. After all, the 8th Prince's ambition was to rule the entire Great Yu State and large martial sects like Yi Yuan School, Tianfeng Hall, etc. were going to become obstacles in the way of his ambition. And these members of Imperial Guards, without exception, were being manipulated by the 8th Prince. They were under his mind control and were willing acting as his lackeys and were just like his dogs, so how could they possibly have any favorable impression in the minds of everyone? Yi Zaiwen's black hair was swaying with the wind, his facial expression looked extremely cold, and surrounded by the dragon congealed from the coiling dragon palm technique, he was just like the emperor who had come into this world, and suddenly, for a time, Jean Linger was left in a somewhat absent-minded state while she was standing gawking in front of this invincible being. This was the kind of invincible aura she had felt only on the body of the 8th Prince. However, this time, she felt the same kind of terror while standing in front of a much younger man. Impossible, in this world, there can only be one king, one God, and that is going to our 8th prince, you are nothing in front of him. As if the feeling of belief in her heart for the 8th prince had been provoked by Yi Shiwen, Jean Linger instantly started to shout like a tigress. She roared loudly, and the long sword in her hand instantly chopped out. Flying beauty. Jean Linger pulled out her long sword and released a bright sword light. She flew in the air and was just like a flying beautiful woman. She appeared very beautiful and graceful, but the long sword in her hands looked extremely cold like ice. Yi Shiwen knew that this was one of the secret techniques called Beautiful Lady Sword Technique, and only the true disciples of high-level sects could practice and obtain complete teachings about this technique. One could see that this Beautiful Lady Sword Technique had been practiced to a superb level. This beautiful woman was fragrant but was deadly poisonous as well. Her ice-cold sharp sword instantly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen didn't have the slightest fear while facing her. His palm turned into dragon claws and grasped towards the incoming attack. In the next moment, that beautiful and ice-cold sword light was directly caught by Yi Shiwen and then crushed to smithereens. How is this possible? How can your body be so powerful? It was simply very hard for Jean Linger to accept such an outcome. It was simply unimaginable. How could Yi Shiwen be so powerful to actually hold her sword attack with his bare hands and then he directly crushed it? Such ability was really very scary. But she didn't have to wait long because Yi Shiwen immediately decided to give her the answer by returning the favor with interest. He used Celestial Step and instantly arrived in front of her. A huge coiling dragon instantly congealed out of nowhere and slapped her. Bang! Jean Linger could not hide from it even if she wanted to. She did not have the slightest chance to evade this attack because Yi Shiwen had simultaneously used the Missing Moon Beheader along with the Coiling Dragon Palm technique in order to block her retreat, and she eventually had to endure Yi Ziwen's slap in the face. Poof! Jean Linger spouted out mouthful of blood and her frail body was instantly blown away after receiving a slap on the face. This slap was so intense that her body was sent flying into the sky while spinning all the way, then fiercely fell on the ground. Yi Shiwen was not the type who would show mercy to a confused chaotic woman like Jean Linger, but it could be said that he was slightly considerate about the fact that she belonged to the same sect as him, otherwise he wouldn't possibly let her off with just a slap on the face. How dare you hurt us, His Highness will not let you off. Jean Linger did not faint and looked at Yi Shiwen with a pernicious expression on her face. Cut the crap, if you bother me anymore, I'll kill you all. Yi Shiwen said in a cold voice, and while saying so, his whole body was shrouded in an intention to kill. No one present there would take his words as a joke, because everyone could feel that Yi Shiwen was not in a good mood, and considering the current situation, he might do such a thing as he was certainly not a soft-hearted person. Jean Linger and the other members of Imperial Guards looked at Yi Shiwen with clear hatred in their eyes, but they didn't dare to speak anymore. They knew well that even a slight slip of tongue could lead to instant death. Yi Shiwen turned around and indifferently said, 8th Prince is relying on his Imperial Guards to go on military conquest of the world, but it in itself seems quite mediocre. Yi Shiwen, don't be so full of yourself. We are ordinary members of the Imperial Guards and today, you have disrespected the 8th Prince's own Imperial Guards. Sooner or later, there will be high-level experts on their way to find you and you may not even live till the time His Highness meets you. Jiaoshu Feng said in a struggling voice. It doesn't matter who it is, if someone wants to step on my head, they better stay away because even if it's a god, I'll kill him, even if it's a devil, I'll kill him. Yi Ziwen's voice thundered and resounded throughout the sky. His voice proliferates everywhere like an undeniable meaning. Even after looking at the somewhat slim stature of Yi Shiwen, people still could not help but believe in Yi Ziwen's proclamation. They just knew in their hearts that he was not boasting for show, that there were no lies in his words. The disciples watching this whole thing from the beginning never actually expected that things would evolve so quickly and take such a turn in the end. The 8th Prince sent his Imperial Guards to relay the declaration of duel to Yi Shiwen, which clearly showed his domineering and aggressive demeanor. But the things developed far more quickly than they imagined and they actually discovered how stubborn and incomparably insolent Yi Shiwen actually could become in a situation like this. And they knew quite well that facing such a form of injustice where his own views were being ignored outright by the opposite party, his approach was quite right, and in the end, he didn't tolerate bullying and humiliation. These three members of Imperial Guards behaved arrogantly and held a superior attitude while notifying Yi Shiwen about the declaration of duel, which really angered Yi Shiwen. They kind of forced him into teaching them a lesson about who was actually the superior one. Many people were excited at these turn of events. Yi Ziwen's actions were tantamount to land a bitter slap on the face of 8th Prince. Now that Yi Shiwen had flung a severe slap right on the face of the Imperial Guards, they won't let go so easily. They would certainly send the high-level Truth Realm Masters after Yi Shiwen. But Yi Shiwen was also like a bottomless pit, there didn't seem to be any limits on his strength. At least right now, no one could compel him to display his full strength, but there was one thing for sure, that the collision between the two sides would certainly be earth-shattering. Dash. Chapter 177 Aftermath and Pressure. The matter about 8th Prince's declaration of duel to Yi Shiwen and subsequent wounding of the members of Imperial Guards at the hands of Yi Shiwen quickly spread everywhere. It seemed as if a forest fire had spread all of a sudden, and almost instantly, it became a hot topic of discussion for many people. That Yi Shiwen is also quite rampant and domineering. Gee, you didn't hear what he proclaimed in front of everyone. He said, "It doesn't matter who it is, if someone wants to step on my head, they better stay away, because even if it's a god, I'll kill him, even if it's a devil, I'll kill him." And right then, on the spot, everyone's complexion changed after hearing his words. Only a great man can say such words so confidently. He actually said that he would kill even the gods or devils if they try to come in his way. Damn, what a pity I was not present on the scene to witness it myself. The members of Imperial Guards are very arrogant and despotic, and relying on their direct relation with the 8th Princes, they have offended many people. But this time, they did a big mistake by offending Yi Shiwen, because he isn't the type of guy who would sit back and take it silently. These members of Imperial Guards tried to pressure him and force their decision onto him, and this is no different than courting death. In the future, I am afraid that this is going to take an unpredictable turn. Although the 8th Prince has obtained some treasures from the Devil Ruins, but even if we exclude him, the Imperial Guard still has a very terrifying master, and if he plans to come into action, then I do not know what will happen to Yi Shiwen, because he is much more formidable compared to Yi Shiwen. And even more frightening is that 8th Prince, no one knows how much treasures he has obtained in the ruins, not to mention his inheritance as a prince. It is very hard to predict the new level of his terrifying strength, which must have gone against the heavens' will by now. At this rate, perhaps in the future, he might really succeed in achieving his goal of dominating the entire Great Yu state. Everyone was talking about this matter, but Yi Shiwen was actually at his residence, and in his hands, there were some documents containing information about the members of Imperial Guards. While going through the documents, he suddenly found some shocking information. He discovered that all of the members of the Imperial Guards were the followers of the 8th Prince, and almost all of them were Truth-level masters. Some of them were at the 3rd and 4th stage of Truth Realm, and there was even a terrifying master at the 5th stage of Truth Realm. However, even a master of the 5th stage of Truth Realm had surrendered to the 8th Prince and was actually the commander of the Imperial Guards. So many large and small Truth-level masters were loyal and devoted to the 8th Prince. These documents were quite secretive and were sent by someone related to Qi Fifan. On the orders of Qi Fifan, the sender of these documents must have researched and collected data about the 8th Prince and his Imperial Guards. These documents also contained few words from Qi Fifan, addressed to Yi Shiwen, stating, "Crush that 8th Prince." Yi Shiwen gave a somewhat forced smile. It seemed that Qi Fifan had shown quite a confidence in Yi Ziwen's strength and thought that he was capable enough to crush the 8th Prince. Qi Fifan could not take an action himself, because if he did, then it would mean that Yi Yuan School thoroughly recognized this generation's conquest and was willing to participate in it. The relationship among the 5 forces was currently very stable, although they still despised each other, but there had been a mutual stability among them for quite a while. Every now and then, they were also fastidious about a lot of rules. For example, seniority was one of them. Since Chief Fifan could not take an action in this matter because of his seniority, so all hope was pinned on Yi Shiwen. However, there was no assurance that Yi Shiwen would be able to handle this matter. After all, the masters of the Imperial Guards were really too many for him to handle on his own. If you can, Yi Shiwen did not want to stir up any trouble, but it was obvious that even if he wanted to, he would not be able to escape from this. The other party was not at all willing to let him off, and even if they decide to let him off, they would do it only on the condition when Yi Shiwen would kneel down on the ground and beg for forgiveness. And he would rather die than to do such a thing. Regardless of who it was, if they wanted to step on his head, they better stay away, otherwise whether it was a god or a devil, he would kill them all. Since it had already come to this, now, nothing could stop him from going all out. Yi Shiwen, the situation doesn't look good. Yi Mo frowned and said after reading the information about the 8th Prince and Imperial Guards. There was a serious look on his face, although in his eyes, considering the time when he used to be at his peak, these people were nothing but a bunch of ants, but as far as Yi Ziwen's current strength was concerned, they indeed were powerful and fearful enemies. I guess you are right, even if I use the poisonous dragon water control flag, the most I can do is beat the masters at the 3rd stage of Truth Realm, but I think the next time, the 2 deputy commanders of the Imperial Guards will most likely make an appearance. Yi Shiwen thought and said. The Imperial Guards had 3 fearful masters, one of them was the commander of Imperial Guards and the other 2 were the deputy commanders. Even the members of Imperial Guards based in the capital city would not be able to easily defeat these 3 masters, and even if one of the 2 deputy commanders attacked Yi Shiwen, it would still be a huge threat to him. Although the 2 deputy commanders were weaker than the commander of Imperial Guards, who was actually a master at the 5th stage of Truth Realm, but they were actually at the peak of the 4th stage of Truth Realm, and it would be very hard for Yi Shiwen at his current strength to defeat these 2 terrifying opponents. But the good news is that now I have some time to enhance my strength, the members of Imperial Guards won't come immediately. Yi Shiwen said. He knew that he would not be able to escape from this battle. The members of Imperial Guards regarded the 8th Prince as their god, and whether it was for their own dignity or for the dignity of the 8th Prince, how could they possibly let him off? For the glory of Imperial Guards and the ambitions of the 8th Prince, they would never let him live. And if they could not find him, then they would most likely go after his family. And most importantly, Yi Shiwen did not want to concede. This was supposed to be a collision between 2 strong beliefs, a confrontation of martial arts, a fight between 2 martial arts beliefs, and he could not possibly back down. His practice was overbearing, he was supposed to be an overbearing warrior, and when a warrior like him was attacked, then he would retaliate and completely destroy all of his enemies. But the practice of the 8th Prince should also be overbearing, so the battle between the 2 must be stunning, and this was only a matter of time. But the good news was that he still had time to improve himself, because he had just been informed that he could not participate in the upcoming competition, and the reason was very simple. After this incident, the other 4 forces strongly protested. They were never informed about the fact that Yi Ziwen's strength was already at the level of true disciples, though officially, he was still an inner disciple and was enrolled to participate in the competition among the inner disciples of the 5 forces. If a truth-level master like Yi Shiwen was allowed to participate in a competition for inner disciples, it would be like an outright massacre of the other inner disciples, which was very unfair. Although, merely more than a year had passed since Yi Shiwen joined the main sect, but within this short period of time, the qualifications of the other new disciples was nowhere close to the current qualifications of Yi Shiwen. Now, the news had already spread everywhere that he was already in the Truth Realm, and even the masters at the 2nd stage of Truth Realm were actually sent flying by his attacks. His strength was simply unfathomable. If he was allowed to participate in the competition of inner disciples, which was actually a mutual show of strength, a way to establish mutual deterrence, then the deterrence effect brought upon by Yi Shiwen would clearly be overkill. The 4 forces did not want Yi Shiwen to participate in the competition, so there was no way left for Yi Yuan's school but to agree. After all, no one expected that Yi Shiwen would be intrepid to such an extent. He had yet to officially become a true disciple. And so, there was no way to just ignore the true disciple test and make him a true disciple in order to make him participate in the competition of true disciples, because the other forces won't accept it. Therefore in the end, it was decided that Yi Shuan won't participate in the competition. Yi Shuan was also quite happy about this outcome and was happily walking around to have a look and observe the competition of inner, core and true disciples of the major forces. These people were actually the highest level masters, representing the top talents of the Great Yu state, especially among the younger generation. However, everyone witnessed the formidable strength of Yi Shuan, and members of Imperial Guards would certainly not go easy on him the next time they would come to confront him, which also meant that he must quickly prepare for his next confrontation with them. At his current strength, Yi Shuan was able to deal with Zhao Shufeng and the other seemingly ordinary members of Imperial Guards, and he certainly didn't face any problem, but there were several other stronger truth-level masters in the ranks of Imperial Guards. All of this was once again compelling Yi Shuan to think of ways to enhance his strength. Although recently stepped into the truth realm, but if it was needed to once again have a breakthrough, it should not pose any problem for him because his accumulation was quite deeper when he was still in the Xiantian realm. It could be said that this accumulation was deeper to such a terrifying extent that it might even be 100 times deeper than required for a Xiantian level master. This was the reason why he was able to set foot into the first stage of Truth Realm and immediately made another breakthrough to reach the peak of the first stage of Truth Realm. And now, he could have a breakthrough to the second stage of Truth Realm, all thanks to his prior accumulation in the Xiantian realm. So as long as there was an opportunity, he could break into the second stage of Truth Realm, and at that time, unless he was not attacked by the commander of Imperial Guards, he should be able to compete with the two deputy commanders and might even defeat them. For most people, if breakthrough was rapid, then they would face a situation of unstable inner state, because for truth-level masters, the comprehension of world laws was especially important. For a truth-level master, the degree of perception of world laws directly determined his strength. However, a lot of time was required to actually strengthen the gained insight about world laws, and therefore, after stepping into the truth realm, experts often stayed on one stage for a long time to gain complete comprehension. But Yi Shuan was not the same as others. He had the help of mysterious space, and as long as there were sufficient spirit stones, the mysterious space could help him to quickly deduce the secrets of world laws and principles so that he could quickly understand and grasp them. Others might take several years to comprehend and gain insight, but in Yi Zaiwen's case, so long as he had enough spirit stones, he could amass the same amount of insight within the time period of few days. And after robbing so many pirates, Yi Shuan did not lack spirit stones. Chapter 178 Great Immortal Battlefield. In the depths of East China Sea, in a huge battlefield, a person's figure was rapidly flying over. Yi Shuan turned over the map. There was one of the ancient battlefields of East China Sea, and in accordance with the labeling on the map, it should be somewhere around here. This area was almost 10,000 li away from the coastline of East China Sea, and taking such a large distance into account, this area could be considered as the depths of East China Sea. At this time, there were two devil wings flapping behind Yi Shuan. He actually gave birth to two devil wings, which could be used simply to attain improved speed and better maneuvering at extremely high speeds. Right now, Yi Shuan was flying so fast that he was able to cover a distance of 10,000 li in a flight of just 3 hours. This belonged to a new school of magical powers that Yi Shuan learnt from Yi Mo. It was called Devil Wings. Just from listening to the name, one could know that it was one of the magical powers of the devils. Moreover, it was also one of the top magical powers, and Yi Zaiwen's skill was still not enough to wield it properly. If he had enough skill, he could have covered the distance of 10,000 li in an instant. Yi Shuan didn't learn this technique earlier because at that time, only his strength was comparable to the masters of Truth Realm, but after all, he still hadn't stepped into the Truth Realm, so there was no way the Zhen Yuan in his body was qualitatively and quantitatively enough to sustain the consumption of energy while using the devil wings. Therefore earlier, Yi Mo did not teach it to Yi Shuan. Now that he had devil wings, he could return to Qianji Island anytime whenever he felt like, and that too very quickly, no matter where he was. After all, Bai Majiao could begin the attack anytime. While using this type of top-class magical power of the devil race, energy consumption was very large. Even at Yi Zaiwen's current strength and skill, in order to cover the distance of 10,000 li, the devil wings actually consumed at least 70% of his energy, and in order to continue using it, Yi Xuan had to consume spirit stones to sustain such a massive rate of energy consumption. At this time, Yi Xuan had covered up his face and had transformed his appearance into that of a handsome and incomparably elegant young man, clad in white robe. Right now, from his transformed appearance, he appeared very handsome and suave. He was a human and there was a battlefield of a race of sea-based demon beasts, less than few thousand li away from there. A super big faction was located there and it was called Great Island of the Immortals. In the East China Sea, it was considered a very big force. Its strength was tyrannical, hardly inferior to a major force like Yi Yuan School. This great immortal battlefield was a huge battlefield where the sea demon beasts of Great Island of the Immortals used to battle perennially, hence give it this name. No one knew how many martial artists and sea demon beast had fallen in this battlefield. And not just masters of Great Island of the Immortals, even many experts from several other sects would come here to gain experience, in order to participate in most intense fights to hone their strengths. After arriving at the great immortal battlefield, Yi Xuan immediately retracted his devil wings since displaying devil powers at this time was not suitable. Although in this world, practicing devil ways of martial arts was not a taboo, but practicing devil races martial arts techniques was considered a taboo by most people, because by practicing devil races martial arts technique, a human being could become depraved and eventually lose his humanity. However, just practicing devil ways didn't have any effect on a human being. In short, practice devil races martial arts techniques would change the physiological characteristics of the human being, turning them into devils, whether they were willing or not, and as long as someone embarked on this road, there was no turning back. But there was no such problem in case of Yi Xuan, because Yi Mo had taught him the most pure form of devil power techniques. Techniques taught by Yi Mo were not the kind of half-complete devil power techniques which were initially introduced by devil race in the human world. During Devil Race's invasion, in order to split up human beings, Devil Race had used some human beings as cannon fodders and had handed down some of their devil power techniques. But these techniques were incomplete and Devil Race had deliberately introduced these techniques in order to turn human beings into devils. However, the techniques that Yi Mo taught him were the most pure devil power techniques and simply didn't have any flaws. Moreover, Yi Mo had also directly learnt their techniques from the great Devil King himself. According to Yi Mo, his previous owner was already at such a high realm that he could instantly create power techniques according to his needs and requirements by using the world laws and principles which he could comprehend with ease. The techniques created by him no longer rigidly adhered to a certain race, because Great Devil King was already at such a level that he had transcended the limits of races. So Yi Xuan did not need to worry, but he still did not want others to find out about his devil powers, otherwise, it would not cause small trouble. Unless and until his own strength was so strong that he didn't need to care about others at all, he would not openly display his devil powers unless absolutely necessary. There were simply innumerable sea demon beasts in the great immortal battlefield and most of them looked formidable. It was needless to say that Yi Xuan couldn't take on too many of these beasts at once and neither did he know how many of these beasts he might have to kill in order to hone his skills. At a distant place, he could see several huge-sized demon beasts. The strong demon beasts were devouring the weaker ones. It was a battlefield indeed. Yi Xuan directly dived into the water and rushed towards the crowd of demon beasts, who were still fighting with each other. Yi Xuan was a truth-level supermaster. He contained strong blood and vitality in his body, which was simply hundreds or even 1,000 times more than that of a Xiantian realm master. Yi Zaiwen's sudden appearance immediately attracted the attention of numerous demon beasts. They rushed towards him, some of which were simply tyrannical and fearful demon beasts, and so many of them were rushing towards him at once. The first group of demon beasts to attack him was a group of silver sharks. Each of these silver sharks was simply like reinforced steel frames swimming towards him at a very high speed. These silver sharks possessed great strength and a very sturdy body. They could easily kill a Xiantian level master in one blow. These silver sharks were actually at the Xiantian ninth stage, and even the strongest of them were at half step into the truth realm, and these demon beasts were present everywhere in this battlefield. Although this great immortal battlefield had quite a reputation, but it was certainly not the most intense battlefield, nor was it the largest one. But, it could be seen in the entire Zhenwujia that humans and demon beasts would frequently battle with each other. These battles continued from land to the sky, extending from sea to the land. They were fighting everywhere for their own survival and multiplication of their respective races. However, these silver sharks had steel-sharp teeth, and if bitten, even the truth-level experts wouldn't come out unscathed. Moreover, these silver sharks were at Xiantian realm, and they were using water-based techniques to shoot overwhelming amount of water swords toward Yi Shiwen, who had already come out of the sea water and was flying in the sky. If land was the territory of humans, then sea was the territory of demon beasts and was simply like a forbidden for humans. Yi Shiwen finally had some understanding of this fact. These demon beasts would attack a human being on the very first sight. Missing Moon Beheader. Yi Shiwen shouted and immediately chopped out his long blade, instantly releasing a burst of blade shadows in the sky, which immediately formed a rain of blade shadows and rained directly on the silver sharks in the seawater. Dozens of silver sharks were chopped to pieces and were instantly beheaded by Yi Shiwen. However, the smell of blood attracted more and more demon beasts towards the place where so many of silver sharks had just been beheaded by Yi Shiwen. If Yi Shiwen was merely a passerby, then looking at so many demon beasts rushing towards him, he would surely have spread his devil wings and immediately escaped. Just the scene of several demon beasts swimming towards someone was enough to send chills down the spine. The number density of demon beasts in this region was simply unimaginable for an average human being. Even if Yi Shiwen was flying in the air, he must be careful all the time in order to not get shot by water swords, because if he was to get shot and fell in the water, then he would surely be attacked by an unimaginable number of demon beasts. Yi Shiwen waved his long blade and a protective layer of blade light completely wrapped him, which was enough to protect him from the attack of Xiantian-level demon beasts, and with each and every blade attack, he was able to kill a troop of demon beasts. The flesh, blood and essence of these Xiantian-level demon beasts were instantly absorbed by Tianyuan Mirror, leaving nothing behind, and their nadins were absorbed by Yi Shiwen, but at Yi Ziwen's current level, this was simply like a drop in the bucket. Yi Shiwen was now a truth-level master, so the nadins of these Xiantian-level demon beasts were nothing more than a drop in the bucket. Killing these Xiantian-level demon beasts simply couldn't be compared with killing a truth-level demon beasts. There was a difference of heaven and earth between truth-level and Xiantian-level demon beasts. But Yi Shiwen was not worried, striking bit by bit, and with ease, he was able to kill these demon beasts, although many of these demon beasts could terrify an average person, but it was impossible for these demon beasts to put even a scratch on Yi Shiwen. His real opponents would be those truth-level demon beasts. Truth-level demon beasts were considered elites among the demon beasts and possessed terrifying strength. While killing these demon beasts, Yi Shiwen almost did not have to use his Zhenyuan. He slaughtered them by relying on his skills and therefore consumed a meager amount of Zhenyuan. He was simply practicing his skills and techniques on these demon beasts and getting used to his newly acquired strength. Soon, the true test arrived for Yi Shiwen. A group of shadows could be seen in the water coming towards Yi Shiwen from a long distance. These shadows were walking upright and immediately attracted the attention of Yi Shiwen. He took a closer look and saw that this was actually a group of water apes. Their whole bodies were covered with blue fur, blue fangs were protruding out, not to mention, each and every one of them looked exceptionally ferocious. These water apes were considered the tyrants of the nearby areas. The demon beast residents of these waters were usually torn apart by the water apes. They were radically a kind of amphibious animals, considering they could survive on land and could also survive in deep water. Basically, water apes belonged to a very special branch of ape-class demon beasts. The most notable thing about them was the fact that compared to their relatives who lived on land, water apes were several times more brutal and instinctively flagitious. The most fearful thing about these water apes was that each and every one of them was in the truth realm, while their leader, Water Ape King, was at the third stage of truth realm. This water ape family was just like a gang of neighborhood bullies. They not only relied on their fearful strength of Truth Realm, but also stayed in a large group, hence acting as a powerful deterrent in their locality. Children, go kill this damn human warrior, he has a very exuberant vitality and seems quite delicious. After killing him, everybody will receive a bite from his body. Water Ape King looked at Yishuan and there was a vicious killing intention in his eyes. Suddenly, the water apes were excited and bellowed. Chapter 179 Truth Second Stage. These water apes held high intelligence, especially the Water Ape King. His intelligence level was almost comparable to a human being's intelligence. These water apes surrounded Yishuan in a circle and used water law-based magical powers and coordinated their fist attacks at him. Yishuan snorted coldly, how he could possibly stay idle and watch while these water apes were actually planning to eat his raw flesh and blood, they really were courting death. Yishuan ruthlessly waved the long blade in his hand without a shred of mercy in his eyes. Puchi. A water ape was directly split in half by Yishuan and its blood and essence was quickly absorbed by Tianyuan Mirror, while its Niden was immediately refined by Tianyuan Mirror. The refined energy was absorbed by Yishuan. Yishuan suddenly felt a torrent of energy emerging in his body, a relaxing feeling spread throughout his body. Only demon beasts of truth level could actually benefit him and his cultivation, and in comparison, Xiantian level demon beasts could only be better than nothing. Although these water apes were mostly at the first stage of Truth Realm, some of them were at the second stage of Truth Realm, but none of them were the opponent of Yishuan. He was basically displaying his incomparably tyrannical strength and slaughtering them like it was a child's play. When Water Ape King saw how Yishuan was effortlessly slaughtering his subordinates, he suddenly got angry, gave out a loud roar and rushed towards Yishuan to kill him. It was said that water apes inherited terrifying and ancient boxing skills in their blood, and once they were angry to the point of their blood boiling with anger, they could instantly display those skills. Water Ape King's fist blasted and brought up an endless tsunami, rushing toward Yishuan to engulf him. Yishuan shot his palm, hidden dragon rises from the abyss, a huge amount of Zhen Yuan was instantly released out towards the rushing tsunami, and right when Yishuan was about to be completely submerged under the water, his palm attack made an intersection. The enormous strength present in the collision made the sea water to seethe with excitement and the entire sea level went hollow and sunk down, forming a huge trough. The surrounding sea water did not have the means to approach Yishuan, because it was being completely cut off on the outside by the Zhen Yuan. Under the water, many Xiantian-level sea beasts had been stunned by this fearful collision and passed out on the sea floor. Yishuan withdrew several steps. This Water Ape King was really extremely terrifying. Yishuan was now strong enough to contend with the ordinary masters at the third stage of Truth Realm, but this Water Ape King was clearly a strong master at the third stage of Truth Realm and was very strong. Yishuan instantly opened his devil wings and a surge of horrifying devil aura instantly burst out in the surroundings. What, you are not a human but a devil? The Water Ape King was suddenly alarmed and a shocked look appeared on his face. After all, there was a huge difference between a human and a devil. Those of devil race were instinctively cruel and aggressive. Human race simply couldn't be compared to the devil race. Yishuan sneered and fiercely jumped forward, his figure instantly disappeared and left after images, while the very next instant, he appeared in front of Water Ape King. A color of surprise flashed in the eyes of Water Ape King, because at an alarming rate and in just a blink of an eye, Yishuan had arrived in front of him. Although the speed of Water Ape King was not slow, but when Yishuan used his devil wings then his speed increased dramatically. At this moment, Yizaiwan's speed was far more superior to that of Water Ape King, in spite of his realm being far above that of Yishuan. When Water Ape King realized that Yizaiwan's speed was superior to his only left was to spread his hands and deploy a set of extremely esoteric boxing moves in order to shield himself. Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag Array. Yishuan shouted and instantly launched 18 surfaced Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag Array, which then immediately flew in the air, forming a huge array of flags, and huge deepwater black serpents suddenly congealed out of nowhere. These serpents were emitting toxic breaths which rapidly filled the entire flag array with toxin. When the water apes encountered such huge deep-water black serpents, it was just like a group of foot soldiers bumping into a group of knights. Needless to say, their fate was sealed. Most of the water apes were sent flying by one tail sweep by the serpents, and those, who even once came in contact with the toxin, perished immediately. The might of 18 surfaced poisonous dragon water control array was simply earth-shattering. Within a moment, the nearby areas up to a distance of almost 100 li were contaminated by the deep-water black serpent and turned toxic, and the sea beasts present in the vicinity were immediately killed by the deadly toxin. These water apes simply weren't the opponents of these deep-water black serpents. Before they could even react, they had already fallen prey to the toxin, and not long after, only Water Ape King was able to survive this. Water Ape King suddenly got furious because he never thought that he wouldn't be able to deal with a petty human being. Rather, in this situation, Yishuan was simply like a super big iron wall. No matter how much he tried to kick, the iron wall simply wouldn't budge. However, at this time, there was no way out for the Water Ape King because Yizaiwan's 18 surfaced poisonous dragon water control flag array had firmly trapped him inside. Although Yishuan could only compete with the weaker Master of the Truth third stage, but with the assistance from the flag, he could easily kill the strong experts of Truth third stage. Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag Array was tightening and rushing towards Water Ape King from all sides. By that time, Yishuan also went inside the flag array and rushed towards the Water Ape King. This flag array was made up by 18 deepwater black serpents, and its overall could be compared with a deepwater black serpent of Truth third stage. And right now, all of these serpents, together, were closing in on him, so there simply was no way for him to contend. Moreover, the Water Ape King also had to contend with Yishuan. Soon, the Water Ape King was beheaded by Yishuan. He seized the Niden from Water Ape King's body and digested it. Even after that, Yizaiwan's preying spree didn't stop in this part of the sea, not because he didn't want to stop, but truly couldn't stop. The reason because there was a steady stream of undersea demon beasts constantly coming after smelling blood, spilled in this part of the sea. So, there was basically endless number of demon beasts rushing towards this area, and he had no choice but to keep on killing them. It was because of this almost endless number of undersea demon beasts that this place had ultimately turned into a super battlefield for humans and demon beasts, famous throughout the East China Sea. During these 3 days among, Yishuan continued crazy killings, to the point of turning the whole water bloody red in that area of the sea, which attracted the attention of numerous foraging demon beasts. More demon beasts meant more crazy killing, which resulted in the massacre of demon beasts, almost day and night, at the hands of Yishuan, most of which were at Xiantian level. However, there were many at the truth level as well. Generally speaking, after the massacre of more than a certain number of lives and absorbing their nadens, Yizaiwan's breath had reached a terrifying level. Although most demon beasts would sense the breath of their prey and decide whether to attack or not, and at this time, Yizaiwan's breath was strong enough to act as a danger alarm, warning others to not get close to him, but since he had practiced restraining breath technique to the acme level, he was able to conceal his real breath, so the ignorant demon beasts still continued to move closer towards him. And within 3 days, after the crazy killings of so many demon beasts and absorbing their nadens, the amount of Jin Yuan, contained in his body, had already reached a majestic level. Yishuan felt that he would step into the Truth second stage at any time, and so long as he was able to reach the Truth second stage, he would be able to contend with Masters of Truth fourth stage. And with the assistance of Flag Array and Tianyuan Mirror, he would easily fight off the Master at the peak of Truth fourth stage. After the endless killings of demon beasts for all these days, their blood, flesh and essence were absorbed by both Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag and Tianyuan Mirror. After 3 days of crazy absorption of blood and essence from the dead demon beasts, the 18 surfaced Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag had a rapid development. 17 of them evolved to reach the point of Truth third stage, and the one, acting as the core of Flag Array, evolved to the extent of reaching the Truth fourth stage, thereby dramatically increasing the total might. Tianyuan Mirror was completely restored to the Truth fourth stage and hence had a power surge. Although it was only a short period of 3 days, but his strength really progressed by leaps and bounds. And now, finally, it was time for Yi Xuan to act. Now that he had accumulated a huge amount of majestic Jin Yuan in his body, it had already begun to stir inside his body. Yi Xuan even had a kind of uncontrollable impulse, making him aware of the fact that it was time to break through, and if he did not have a breakthrough now, then the Jin Yuan would continue to stir up and might go out of control and end up exploding his body. Yi Xuan opens his devil wings and made his way through the crowd of demon beasts while beheading those in his way, then flew out of the water, high into the sky. At this time, the demon beasts, still in the sea, used water-based attacks at him, but he used devil wings to block the attacks. The devil wings were mighty and enormous, giving full protection to Yi Xuan, while he was flying towards the clouds. After diving into the cloud, he decided to camouflage his own breath, and at the same moment, Tianyuan mirror appeared on top of his head, and completely camouflaged his breath. Yi Xuan began to have a breakthrough, also starting the unceasing circulation of Jin Yuan in his body, running over and over in his meridians, while releasing the aura bit by bit. Yi Zaiwen's energy accumulation had already reached the profound, to the point of being impossible even for a master of the truth second stage. Even a master of the truth third stage wouldn't dream of accumulating so much amount of energy in his body. Only Yi Xuan was capable of achieving such a feat. The reason was that Yi Xuan had practiced tyrant body technique, so his body could accommodate such a terrifying amount of energy accumulation, but right now, even he reached the limit, and if not had a breakthrough sooner, then his body would explode. Did not know for how long, Yi Zaiwen's aura continued to grow to the limit, then broke free from the shackles and suddenly burst out. It was mighty and enormous, to the point that even Tianyuan mirror could no longer contain his aura inside. Yi Xuan opened his eyes. Finally, he broke through to the truth second stage, and now, the strength of the two deputy commanders of Imperial Guards was no longer a match of his strength. However, Yi Xuan actually knew that this was not enough, far from enough. Although now he was far stronger the two deputy commanders of Imperial Guards, but one must not forget that the 8th prince was said to be at the peak of truth 4th stage, and he was so strong that a master of the truth 5th stage was his subordinate, so his strength could be imagined. Chapter 180 Devil Commander's Tomb. Although Yi Xuan didn't want to spare even a single glance to the 8th prince, but the very existence of the 8th prince was inflicting pressure on him. Other might not say, but Yi Xuan had come to understand the mindset of this arrogant prince. According to the hearsay, earlier, the 8th prince had been able to overcome the super master of truth 5th stage, but no one knew the current extent of his cultivation and strength. Not to mention, rumors said that he got his hands on the ancient heritage of a large faction, so considering all these points, his strength would have definitely progressed by leaps and bounds. And since such a person was hostile towards Yi Xuan, so he was in lot of pressure, but these pressures were actually working towards transforming the strength of Yi Xuan, making his strong, much stronger than ever before, and if things continued like this, then his strength would go beyond the strengths of 8th prince, then Chief Fifan, and so on. Yi Xuan possessed a strong heart, which was the basic reason how he was able to deal with any formidable enemy. None of the enemies were able to make him submit, on the contrary, they only forced Yi Xuan to become much more powerful, and every time, Yi Xuan diligently put all his efforts in becoming stronger. Yi Xuan made a breakthrough and became stronger, but there was no way he would go back now. He seemed all prepared to begin the slaughter once again, but suddenly, he discovered many more warriors in the surrounding waters. Moreover, these were very powerful warriors, and almost each one of them was a master at truth 3rd stage or above. Yi Xuan felt somewhat strange. What was going on here? What was the reason behind the concentration of so many powerful warriors in this area? One must know, although it used to be one of the ancient battlefields, but normally, not many warriors would come here because several years had passed and not many people wanted to come here daily. Generally, in a day, one could expect to find only a handful of people in this place. But right now, Yi Xuan suddenly saw the emergence of dozens of experts, and almost all of them were the terrifying masters of truth 3rd stage or above. It was quite unusual to witness the arrival of so many truth-level strong experts at once in this battlefield. In the end, what could be the reason behind this? While Yi Xuan was still thinking about investigating this, suddenly a loud shout came from a distant place. He was surprised to find out that the voice belonged to a purple-robed female, who was currently fighting with a great shark in the water. Yi Xuan noticed that she appeared to be 20 years old, had a curved small eyebrow, beautiful snow-white skin. She looked very beautiful and also seemed to be skilled in swordsmanship. Each of her sword strike was beautiful, as if stars were falling from the sky in the form of dazzling sword light. One could see that she possessed profound sword skills and was also a master of truth 3rd stage, but right now, she was facing a giant shark, which was a demon beast at the peak of truth 3rd stage. Its strength should be much stronger than that of the purple-robed woman. Although she possessed exquisite and outstanding sword skills, but it was obviously not enough to save her in such a perilous situation. After struggling for a long time, she finally fell under the wind, and appeared to be in a very dangerous situation. At this time, many warriors looked at this scene but didn't step forward to lend a helping hand. It was not like they were sinister people, many of them were not necessarily bad, but there was always a lot of struggle for power going on in the sects and among the sects as well, which would generally morph their mindsets into that of selfish people who only cared of their own safety. Right now, they knew that if they went to save the purple-robed girl then they might possibly suffer the same fate as her, so they were hesitant to come forward. However, unlike them, Yi Xuan did not give much thought to this, and the moment he saw that the purple-robed girl was in danger, he directly flew towards her and simultaneously chopped out his long blade, releasing out a splendid blade light towards that giant shark. The blade light instantly arrived in front of it, and the next instant, the giant shark was chopped into 2 halves. Elder brother, this girl is called Qianqian. Many thanks to elder brother for saving my life. May I get the honor of knowing elder brother's good name? That purple-robed girl, Qianqian said in a very polite manner. Yi Xuan. Yi Xuan replied in a similar polite manner, it was slight effort, don't think about it. Yi Xuan did not care about little things, and what he said was the truth because it really did take him slight effort to save her life. And from her appearance and gesture, she appeared like a diligent person to him. It seems Senior Yi is alone. Would you dare to come to the Devil Commander's tomb? Senior looks very skilled and brave for the job. Qianqian's awkward and polite demeanor suddenly shone up with brilliance and splendor, and a bright look appeared in her eyes. Devil Commander's tomb. Yi Xuan had some doubts since he seemed to know nothing about it. Senior Yi doesn't know. Qianqian gave a somewhat puzzled look to Yi Xuan, as if why did he come here for if he didn't know about Devil Commander's tomb? Well, please tell me about it, girl. Yi Xuan said. If Senior Yi does not mind then he can call me Qianqian. Qianqian said, although it was difficult to guess the age of a martial artist, but on the long road to martial arts practice, the difference of few years was nothing, the seniority only depended on strength. Just now, she was in a perilous situation while facing a giant shark, but the same giant shark could not even sustain a single blade attack from Yi Xuan and was split into 2 halves. This clearly proved that Yi Ziwen's strength was much higher than her own strength, and this was the reason why she addressed to him as Senior Yi. Although Senior Yi doesn't know about this, but I must say that it is not a secret or something, all of these people know about it. Qianqian said, this place is called Great Immortal Battlefield. I presume Senior Yi knows about this, right? Yi Xuan nodded, he knew about this, that's why he rushed here. This matter starts from Great Immortal Battlefield. The reason why Great Immortal Battlefield was opened a long time ago was that human warriors and demon beasts used to frequently compete for the control of this area, and this led to the outbreak of war and also caused a protracted war of several years, which at last led to the formation of this ancient battlefield. Qianqian further explained, but there is a hidden reason about which no one actually knows. Originally, this place is actually a burial ground of a devil commander. In those days, the great island of the Immortals and a certain demon beast country obtained news about this and severely fought in order to gain complete control of the tomb, ultimately forming this ancient battlefield, but initially, both parties had sent a large number of experts to find out a way to go inside, but they never found a way in, and this slowly led to the putting down of the exploration of this tomb. But who would have thought that the Devil Commander's tomb, that has been untouched all this time, will be opened, and this has immediately alerted the two top factions as well, but no one knows how this news was leaked and attracted a large number of experts. In the past, when Devil Army invaded Jinwujia, a stunning war erupted between the experts of the two worlds. Many devil experts had fallen during the war, and they formed various tombs and cemeteries throughout the Jinwujia to bury those devil experts. But the discovery of each of these tombs would always lead to an exploration by countless people, because these devil experts were extremely terrifying masters when they were alive, especially a devil commander, who was supposed to be fearful master above the legendary realm. The tomb of such a peerless expert would contain a multitude of priceless treasures, magical tools, magical weapons, etc. This was just like a fatal attraction for so many warriors. Grab anything and one could obtain tremendous amount of wealth. Yi Xuan never expected that this ancient battlefield would turn out to be formed this way, not to mention it was also a devil commander's tomb. Yi Xuan, this is a good opportunity for us. I never expected to hear about a devil commander's tomb. Yi Mo suddenly said, in the devil world, a devil commander holds the rank of a feudal lord. There should be a lot of good things in his tomb. As far as other humans are concerned, I think it's impossible for them to completely utilize the treasures left behind by the devil commander, but you are different. You can practice legitimate devil arts, so you can definitely use these treasures. Yi Xuan thought, perhaps this was an opportunity. If he could get treasures in this devil commander's tomb, then his cultivation might go a step further once again. In that case, there would be a greater certainty of his victory over the eighth prince. After all, this was the tomb of a devil commander, whose cultivation, at the time of his death, was probably above legendary realm. It was simply impossible to imagine the extent of his strength, and if Yi Xuan managed to obtain even a small portion of his treasures, then it would certainly be a great advantage for his future practice. Senior Yi seems quite interested in Devil Commander's tomb. Qianqian openly said. I will go and have a look. Yi Xuan did not hide anything, and there was no need to hide as well. Such being the case, since Senior Yi is not part of a team, might as well join us. Qianqian said. Have you formed a team with others? Yi Xuan asked. Qianqian nodded. I'm not so strong like Senior Yi, so I cannot possibly wander alone in an ancient battlefield. This time, I have invited a few friends to come together with me. These are people who have dared to explore the Devil Commander's tomb with me. Yi Xuan nodded, so that was the case, but it was not surprising that she formed a team because not everyone could be like Yi Xuan. He was so outrageously powerful that he did not need a partner to wander around in this ancient battlefield. It could be said that Yi Xuan was a one-man army. Invite a few friends to journey together was pretty normal. Moreover, a devil commander was supposed to be an unsurpassed existence, the so-called commander of formidable devil troops. Even if now he was dead, but no one would dare to look down on him, not to mention, nobody knew what they might find in such a peerless master's tomb. There was no such thing as free lunch under the sun. If you want to obtain something, you must pay for it. But Yi Xuan did not care. He believed in the saying, no pain no gain, so he must face dangers in order to obtain something beneficial. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.